Hello. I recently got the chance to chat with one of the most amiable, interesting, and all-round good folks in the wargaming scene. Having cut his teeth working in Derby's Games Workshop store, he moved to the design studio and became one of the first army painters for Games Workshop. There he proved his efficiency and skill with the brush, and his charisma and just all-round awesome personality ensured that he became a community favourite when he moved to Warhammer TV. Since leaving Games Workshop, he has built his own community and an awesome channel on YouTube where he shares his wonderful tips and his love for the hobby. I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today I'm in conversation with Peachy himself, Chris Peach. Peachy, thank you so much for joining me. I like to start just by getting a bit of a feel for how you got your start in the hobby. Like, what got you into gaming, I suppose?
Oh, yeah, it's a long story back in '84. That's how long ago it was. I suppose the hobby for me started off with just metal lead figures that me dad used to cast himself. They were the days when you'd have I think it was the oh god, Prince Eugene or something like that, molds you could buy, and then you just buy little ingots of lead and you'd melt them in a frying pan, which my mum hated. Don't use that for making eggs, that's for sure. But yeah, so it started off those early days. My dad had loads of lead figures. They're all like Napoleonic historical stuff, and he just gave me a load that he wasn't doing anything with, and I used to slap color on them. And yeah, granted, the age of 4, just putting like orange on a cavalry guy, painting the horse green and stuff. And being an army brat as well, during that time my dad was in the forces, so seeing tanks and like soldiers walking around all the time, it was quite well obvious that that's something I want to do. I like soldiers, I like toy soldiers, and I'm getting into this, and seeing my dad do it with his buddies and stuff. And then my brother Mark, I think he was the one that really pushed me into fantasy, because I used to have all sorts of like army figures for like different periods and stuff, but it wasn't until he'd gone to Games Workshop in Derby, probably like when we moved back from Germany to the UK. He had some of the old classic Lord of the Rings figures. I don't know if you ever remember seeing those. They're like really
Yeah.
like Sauron was just like some hooded guy on a chair with an eye on the top of it. But yeah, it was painted in like enamels, are really shiny, but there was such fondness of that. And that's, I think, where my journey started with certainly my Warhammer hobby, as well as like collecting toy soldiers and painting them. A long time ago, Jordan. A long time.
So did that lead you into Games Workshop itself then, like to play the games and start Warhammer and 40k?
Yeah, it took a while. I think because we like got into like the board games, because MB was doing things, and or was it Waddington's? I think it was MB that did like
MB Hero Quest. Yeah.
Yeah, Hero Quest, Space Crusade. So we got into those to start off with, really like them, and obviously had the Games Workshop logo on the side, and that's when for me I was like, oh, they must do more. So we went to the shop in Derby, and then you'd see all these other figures that it do, and I'd just buy like the odd knight or the odd goblin or the odd elf from time to time, getting for Christmas. I remember desperately wanting for Christmas, in the Derby store they had like the cabinets, and there was this really cool dystopian police car with these dystopian coppers, and there was like it was like a diorama. There's a bit of a gunfight. I was like, oh, because I didn't know, and it was a diorama that someone had kit bashed and made themselves using like model kits that weren't available in the store. But to a kid walking by, that was like, I want that for Christmas. Can I get that for Christmas? Mum and dad like, they don't do that. So they went hunting high and low to try and find this dystopian police car with these dystopian policemen, because I really thought they were cool. In the end, I got a Rhino and the Terminator box set, and yeah, I was like, this is cooler. This is cool. So my favorite, I think that was probably my first proper workshop kit for myself, because everything else was like communal between the family, like the Space Crusade, the Hero Quest sets and stuff. Really wanted Mighty Empires, not Mighty Empires. What was it called? Oh, I forget now because I'm so old. It was so long ago. Battlemaster. That was it. Battlemaster. It was like
Right.
an older version of Warhammer where
Mm.
you'd have like some of these plastic units. I think some of them were the plastics from some of the Hero Quest sets as well. Like some of the
Sure, like the ogres and things like that.
yeah. There was
Yeah.
like the crossbowmen or the mercenaries, what they were.
Yeah, the henchmen.
Uh, that's the ones. Yes, you know your stuff, don't you, Jordan? You know your stuff. I've got so much like random hobby knowledge in my head that it just like pushes all the actual facts out. But yeah, so that I think that was really when it would have been 88, something like that, 89 when I got
Mm.
those, and yeah, from then onwards I was sold and loved the front cover of the Terminate box. It was like this weird green alien sort of cavern they're in, and you got these blood angels, like Terminator blood angels. It's really classic box set. Yeah, I just used to stare at the art. And I think that's where my love for art came from a lot as well. Was I used to like drawing and sketching, but like doing fantasy art stuff was, I think, workshop really kicked that in
Mm.
quite an early age.
Were you
Great.
playing a lot during that time then, or as well, or was that like just getting the figures home and sort of playing on the shelf with them? Yeah.
So we played Hero Quest properly and Space Crusade properly. And then my brother introduced me to second edition Warhammer with Harry the Hammer on the front.
Mm.
I think it was the second edition because it had like the magic book, the battle book, and then the rule book. Lost the box set for it, and he was like, "We need to play this." And there was like all these weird rules for like drinking and psychology, and he started like talking me through all these things, and I just switched off, Jordan. I switched off because I just wanted to like hit stuff with my swords. So he was the wrong sort of, I guess, idea of how you intro someone into the hobby. It's
Mm.
like this is what not to do on how to intro someone in the hobby. Talk about psychology, terror, being an alcoholic in the armed forces of the empire. I just wanted to hit stuff with my hammers.
Mm.
But yeah, we rolled some dice, but it wasn't really proper, so we just used to keep it to Hero Quest. And it wasn't, I think, until I got to secondary school when I actually understood how to play Warhammer properly, because I had some mates that were into it, and then we started getting like a bit more into it, and then went to the actual shop in Derby and got introed into Warhammer. And at that point I got Necromunda as well, so we played that properly.
Right.
But yeah, that's where my Necromunda's been quite an early inspiration for me, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah.
Been into that for a long time. But yeah, not played properly, but tried. Kind of tried.
Do you remember any of those early armies or gangs that you were collecting?
Yeah, so really early was just like a handful. Some of it was workshop stuff, and there was a shop called Amazing in Derby that used to do all these lead figures. Some of them were like Ralpatha, some were like Marauder miniatures, some of them were just random other stuff. And they'd have this nice sort of like, if you go into a jeweler's and you see all the jewelry laid out, it was like one of those but full of like lead figures, and it was just like, oh, can I have one of 14B, can I have two of like 12A, and you'd be like some knights and stuff, and they were like fun models. And I remember like assembling an ad hoc group of knights and I think a couple of elven archers, and some of them were workshop ones, some of them were these other random ones on molded bases and stuff. But it proper turned into a collection army when I was doing which edition was it? Would it be? I'm going to ask you because there's been that many editions. It was the Lizardmen and Bretonians set. I want to say
Sure.
fifth, but I don't know if it was
fifth edition.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then we got into Warhammer strong, like myself, my dad, my brothers, and I wanted to do dwarfs. So I was given the Lizardmen from the set. I didn't want the Lizardmen. Jordan, I wasn't interested in lizard men, but I was given them. I was like, great, cool. What do I do with these? And I was like, I don't want lizard men. My dad was like, well, I'm having the knights. So I was like, cool. Well, you did buy it, so it's fair. And in the end, my dad obviously clearly felt sorry for me, so he got me some dwarfs. I got some hammerers. And my army was 8 dwarf warriors, 4 dwarf hammerers, 4 dwarf slayers, and a manticore from the game Dark World. Because you could hire manticores in your dwarf army and spider swarms and stuff like that. And as you can probably tell, against 2 units of cavalry and 2 units of archers, they didn't do very well. But we had fun nonetheless. But yeah, we proxied some of the Saurus as dwarf warriors for a short time. But yeah, so that was the start of Peach's Dwarf Army. Was 16 figures and a random plastic tiny Manticore from a game system that kind of like felt like Hero Quest but wasn't Hero Quest.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just awful. But yeah, my brothers had Empire Troopers and like all sorts of stuff. They had like proper professional armies. I was just too young. I got the hand-me-downs, Jordan. That's what I got. Not only clothes but models.
Well, I'm sure they put up a good fight, though, right? You know, these are dwarves.
I mean, yeah, I mean, when I got a proper unit of Slayers, which was in the end a unit of 20 Slayers, and then Long Drong Slayer Pirates to supplement that on the side, no one disrespected the dwarves anymore. The Book of Grudges did get big at that time. It was thick. Yeah, no, I love those times. Very, very. I mean, it was on a snooker table, an old snooker table with my brothers. You know, like not like we're talking like a proper snooker table. We're talking like the ones you get from Argos that are like probably a kill team board now size. But to us, that was big at the time, and it had green felt on it, which looked like grass. So that was our gaming table for a long time. And then we just used to put like if you ever been to IKEA and you get these little drawers with like a little sort of insert cut out of it that you can just put your finger and slide it out. They made great orc buildings because you just turn them upside down and the little insert looked like a door. So we used to use those as buildings.
A very small door for Grots, I guess.
A very small door. Yeah. I mean, Gretchen, perfect for Gretchen, not great for orcs. But yeah.
So were you actually painting at that time then? You mentioned some of the enamels you used. So you were already into the sort of painting
side? Yeah. I think 84 was when I started painting. I never stopped from then onwards. I mean, I wasn't particularly good at it. And I had a lot of like Airfix, Revel, and all the other brands of plastic figures I used to paint those lots as well. So, and because they're 1/72 scale, they're a lot smaller. So I got quite accurate with straps and like belts and like putting the metals on muskets. So when it came to actually painting larger, chunkier models, it felt a bit easier. Obviously, there were some mistakes here and there. I've got upstairs in the attic a mummy from Hero Quest where I did the old fried egg eyes on it. I tried to paint eyes on it. It's not even got eyes. It's got like bandages like there, and I've got these massive fried egg eyes on a mummy that doesn't need them. So yeah, I was painting, and we used to have like a lot of the workshop paints and Humbrol paints and stuff like swamp brown, worm purple, glittering gold, all those kind of great colours of the past. I love worm purple. I still remember that quite well. But yeah, painted quite a lot, and I think that was the thing as well. It became quite a fun little sort of hobby time in the evenings. Like my dad will be sat there painting kitchen table, which my mum hated obviously, but he'll be painting, I'll be painting, my brothers would jump in from now and again, my sister would jump in from now and again, but it was usually myself and my dad that were there. We were hardcore, the others were just tourists. Even though it was my older brother that got me into it, really. But yeah, so we used to paint a lot. Me and my dad did, and then have like trash talk over the painting table about this unit I'm painting. Now it's going to smash his new unit that he's painting. And then inevitably that never happened. But yeah,
that's great. I mean, it sounds like the Derby store, the Games Workshop store in Derby, was like quite a pivotal place for you, even in the early sort of portion of your gaming career, I suppose, right? But then it would go on to become even more important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the Derby store was like the hub of the hobby. And early days, it was a bit sort of like intimidating because I didn't quite understand why people would jump up to me and start talking to me loads and then not leave me alone. But then as you got older, you realize that's called being a salesman. That's what you do. You need to talk to people and find out what they're after. But yeah, I used to go in there all the time. And there was a lot of the staff when I got to college as well. So when I got to college, I'd like, have free days here and there where we weren't doing studies, or it would be like half term or inset days or whatever. So I'd go to workshop, and a lot of the staff there are new, and a lot of the staff when I started working there were still there, and some of them moved up to Warhammer World. And my manager that eventually hired me, because it was random. I was like, I'd applied for a job at workshop a few times. When I was at college, they were hiring staff to work in mail order, and I was like, I could do that. And it panned out it was a full-time job, because initially it was like advertised as a part-time job. When I attended the recruitment day, it was a full-time job, and I'd have to finish college, and I was talking to my mom and my partner Liz, who's now my wife, and she was like, well, you probably want to do your studies. My dad was like, you probably want to do your studies. Mum was like, if you want to do it, you do it, you do whatever you want to do. And I was like, oh. And they rung up and said they found someone else, so it kind of decided that was fate. So that decided, because I was quite keen to get into workshop, and I was like, should I stop my studies for this? But I'm glad I stayed and did my university course and college course. But when I was at uni, I dropped in one day just chatting, and there was a guy there. His missus was on the same course as my wife, and he was like, "Have you ever thought of working?" I was like, "Yeah, many times. I've applied loads of times." And he was just like, "Oh, we've got a recruitment day coming. You might want to come along." And weirdly, I got the job. So I think because I'd learned a lot of people skills by that point, because I'd gone to college and I'd gone to uni, and become more sociable. I'd obviously built up a bit more of a friendly demeanor, I guess. I didn't think I was particularly off-putting before, but yeah, I think it was confidence as well, confidence in myself. So I got the job. My manager at the time was Chris Pritchard, who I knew many times and saw many times in retail when I was a customer and I was young. So he was well aware of who I was. And yeah, that's the journey of Peachy starting his career at Games Workshop. A wet behind the ears key timer who was probably in his, I think it was at the end of my first year actually at uni.
Right.
But yeah, because what had happened, Jordan, was I was working in a different retail shop called Quick Save, which some people may remember. Used to get like the no frills, kind of like, it was like white boxes, like military writing on it. And that basically that whole business just stopped, and we were all made redundant. It went into liquidation. We were all made redundant. And as a 16, no, I'll be 18 at that time, as an 18-year-old, being given like quite a lot of money as redundancy because I've been working there for a few years, I was like, what am I going to do with this? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Games Workshop, buy some toys. So obviously I put some aside because I wanted to get a motorcycle as well. But yeah, I definitely made full use of that redundancy. And that's when I started having the conversation with the guys. But yeah, so that was the origin story of Peachy moving into workshop. And then yeah, from then onwards, moved my way through being a key timer whilst I was at college, uni. And when I finished uni, I basically said to the manager, I was like, look, I want to be an artist for workshop. And he was like, yeah, makes sense, because you like drawing and you did illustration at uni and you were working for Games Workshop. He was like, what's your plan? I was like, well, I've got nothing planned for the next couple of months because it's the summer holidays. And he was like, do you want to move to full-time hours whilst you do that? Because I can always do with extra help in the shop. And I was like, yeah. And I guess in a weird way, it set me on a different path. Let's put it that way. I slowly but surely did less drawing and became less illustrative with my artwork, and more into painting armies and painting. So my art took a massive backseat, and my passion for playing games, painting armies, and basically being a retail staff member for workshop was took over. And if I was to look back in time, would that be the right decision? And I'm like, well, it was the decision I made, and it's where I am now. That's what got me where I am now. So maybe it was the right decision. I spent all that time at uni learning to do illustration, but nothing that I learned didn't get used during my time in workshop, because I did lots of posters for events and stuff like we used to do in store. All that artistic learnings and those skills were used and for painting, freehanding, color theory. So when I look back now, I didn't lose anything. I just gained lots of extra skills to paint better or faster, or well, certainly better for a time and then faster later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
fascinating. No, it's interesting. So
I do that.
What kind of era would that have been then? So that
was the Lord of the Rings era. So that's when they were doing
the early 2000s.
Yeah. So it was it would be 2001, mid 2001. So it was August, around about August time when I got the job. And they needed people in retail to deal with what I guess someone had the gift of foresight. Someone was playing Elrond at workshop at the time, knowing that lots of people would be coming in because the movies would be coming out. They'd done this whole push to get like loads of like models out. My very first intro game was playing the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game that was out with the Moria Goblins, the Men of Numenor, and the High Elves, and I had no idea how to play the game. And it was a Saturday morning, and it was like, right, go and teach people how to play this game. I was like, I don't know the rules. I was like, oh well, off you go. I was like, how do I? Okay. So that's when 4+ Peach Hammer was born. Because it's not really what they did, and I get why they did it now. Was it was to teach me how to engage and have fun with people, as opposed to get hung up by the rules. Because the point of an intro game is to get people excited about the models and the idea of gaming, as opposed to knowing all the rules and knowing exactly how it works. Obviously, there'll be some customers that want to know the nitty-gritty of how Middle Earth is different from 40k, or how it's different from Warhammer or whatever. So knowing the rules is useful in those occasions. But if it's like a kid who wants to get into the hobby, you don't need to know the rules. It's just have fun, shoot stuff, watch things die, get them excited. Watch kids wee themselves, which has happened multiple times because they got so excited they didn't want to go to the toilet.
Oh wow!
And then you're like, Dad, do you want to go and take him downstairs and get him sorted out? I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's happened a few times. Not because my games were so amazing that they read themselves because they were so amazing, just because having a child of my own, they just focus on different things and not their own bladder. So yeah, I learned that quite early on. Going, let's go for a toilet before we play. No, good, all right, let's go. But so yeah,
I mean, I'm guessing the Peachy 4+ hammer, right? That's literally just everything's a 4+ roll. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. Okay. So when you can see people aren't quite getting to grips with the rules, it's just easy to explain. Like, all you need to do is roll that dice. If you get a 4, 5, and a 6, you hit me. Okay, got 4, 5, and a 6. Yep, you've hit me. I just need to get a 4, 5, and a 6. If I don't, I die. And they're like, oh, okay. I don't get a 4, 5, and a 6, I'm dead. So it reduced, like, oh, you got this chart, and then you combine it with this chart, and then you need to get a 5. Or sometimes you can make it hard. Like, oh, this is the big Moria troll. You need to get a 6 on a dice to kill that guy. And I'm like, oh, okay, and then roll the dice, and they get a 6, and they like scream with like rage and like excitement, and then you kill the troll or whatever. But most of the time, it was just when like some of the customers or like kids were, you could tell that they're probably within that first 30 seconds, you can tell that you can judge your game and cater it to the audience that you have. So a lot of time it would just be like excitable kids coming in for, it was just Peach Hammer. Yeah. But then when you get like your 27-year-old who wants to learn how to play Middle Earth or Warhammer, then you're going to show you how to play the rules. I'll show you how a cannon works, how guess ranges work and stuff like that. So you just cater it. That was something that I had to learn. It took a while, granted. But yeah, you get a feel for that first 30 seconds of a conversation. You're like, yeah, you probably know what it's about, so we can go a bit more in depth with the rules and stuff. When I look back now, there was a lot to consider, because you had the 10 Commandments, which was like this checklist of things you'd need to do when you're in retail. And first thing is like being aware of people coming in, and then when you're aware, you clock. You're like, right, they're looking at the ceiling. So this is something that's fascinated me. When people know what they're after and they're regulars, and let's say I've gone to a random store that I've never been to before, you can instantly tell a regular from a new customer just by their body language, which was mad. So you could see someone come in, hyper focused, they know where they're going, they know what they want, regular. Someone comes in bewildered, like, I'm just going to look at the ceiling because there's so much to look at. You're like, not a clue what's going on. Right. Okay. You need help. And usually it'd be like a gran or like a mum, like, I've been given this list for like Men of Gonad. Do you do Men of Gonad? I'm like, no, but we do Men of Gondor, so I can get you some of those. I'll come over here and I'll show you where they are. We used to make a Christmas list as well, Jordan, of all the weird things we got asked for. There is quite a sweary word, so I probably won't say it because I don't want you to be demonetized. Sure. But an old lady asked for a screaming school. Well, she wanted a screaming school chucker, but she used a different word.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, my grandson's asked for this. Is this a thing? I'm like, that's not a thing. No. No, you want a screaming school chucker. Oh, okay, so it chucks skulls. She's like, okay. I thought this was getting really weird. I was like, yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of stuff that if you've been in the hobby for a long time, you sort of take for granted, whether it's names and concepts and stuff like that. And that's in the universes as well as the rules, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
There must have been a lot of people who've only ever played Monopoly who are coming in and just don't have any conception of what a war game is or how it works.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of people that were like fans of chess at school,
Mm.
or they understood chess. They're like, it's like chess, isn't it? I was like, yes, it kind of is, but it isn't. And then you'd explain like you got you don't have like squares on a board, and you don't have the exact same forces. Sometimes you might do, depending on the game as you're playing stuff. But it was interesting to see like the different levels of experience that people would come into the store and what they'd understand and what the concept. I mean, we've had people that didn't even know wargaming existed, and they'll just wander by going, "What is this?" Because they'd see like a really nice diorama in the front window, because you always put like your cool dioramas, you put your nice models in the spinny cabinet at the window, and they'll just be wandering by. They're probably like just been buying fashionable clothes and hanging out with their beautiful wife and beautiful children. They're walking by and they're just like, I remember I liked toy soldiers when I was a child, and I used to go, well, I've just seen this building and it's got like things in it with trees and like hills. What is this? And you just start talking, and most of the people would be really like receptive and really interested. You would get the odd person who just come in to take the mic, but that's normal. But what I used to find funny was when they did, you kind of knew they knew the hobby and they've engaged with it because of their knowledge of language.
Yeah.
So you'll have like a guy coming going, "Oh, you geeks, or with your Dungeons and Dragons and your Empire soldiers." Like, well, if you know what Empire soldiers are, you've clearly been in before, haven't you? And he's like, and then he'll suddenly go off. Then come back 2 days later going, "I'm really sorry, can you show me how to play again, because it's been a while." I was like, yeah, no worries, no hard feelings. I knew you'd be back. But yeah, it was interesting, like how people would engage with it and their understanding of my wife Liz, she'd walk past that shop many times, because Sandgate, it's gone down quite a hill a lot, because lots of the shops, because it used to be quite an affluent road, because Workshop builds its shops on like either in I guess what do you call them? Oh my days, shopping malls, shopping centres. Right. They're like the really
high
expensive
traffic.
Yeah, high traffic, really expensive rent, but you get the money back from the high traffic. But most workshops tend to be on what they call the tertiary zones, so they're on the really outskirts, so it's a destination store as opposed to something you might just stumble by.
Right.
But for a long time, Sadlergate was quite trendy, and then it got quite high end. There was lots of like fashionable clothes shops down there, luggage shops, cafes, and it ceased to be a tertiary sort of zone and more of a secondary zone, but you still got the same kind of traffic from like older customers, but you get all these newer folks coming down and lots of quite trendy people, and they'll be like, "Whoa, what's this geeky thing?" Most of them you can see in their eyes that they'll be interested in it. But yeah, it was an interesting time seeing the different demographics of customer you'd get in the shop, but most of them were super nice people and very fascinated by what we did, even if they didn't buy anything.
Sure.
They were fascinated. So yeah, I love those days. Miss them weirdly. Don't miss some parts of it, but miss some of it.
Well, what was it like in the actual store, like as a worker in the retail, in the sort of retail side of Games Workshop during that era? So obviously things are taking off massively with Lord of the Rings. There's a huge new influx of interest and customers, I suppose. Was it like an exciting time to be working at GW? Yeah,
I'd say so. There's definitely a golden era. I've got two golden eras. I've got a golden era in the studio and a golden era in retail. And I would say like me joining to probably 2006. So a good 5-year stint of retail, which was what I call like, it was just a great time, because initially it was like I was just learning the ropes, and I was surrounded by really confident staff who knew that kind of thing, and they showed me the way, and eventually they all drifted off to go to like different retail shops or do different things in the business. And then I ended up managing the shop, and I had Duncan work with me. I had a guy called Nigel who works at Workshop still, a guy called Neil who works at Workshop still in Forge World, and a couple of other guys who have gone off to do other things. But it was like the dream team. And what I found really interesting was you felt like you were an important part of the community, and responsible for like the community as well, of like the hobby in your area. So there was like an extra level of responsibility on you to make sure you did everything right, you conducted yourself well when you were out and about, and if you saw a customer and they started talking to you, you weren't drunk or acting inappropriately or anything like that. So even like sometimes I'd be walking around in town and like have a slight disagreement with Mrs. Peach about like some form of thing, and then I'll be like, we can't be having arguments out here because the customers might see. She'll be like, okay, we'll save this one for home. I was like, yeah, okay, I don't want to though, I don't. But yeah, so as I guess a hub of that local community, you had quite a responsibility, but it was also quite liberating, just running your own shop with people that you trusted and had a great relationship with as well. It was such a great time. And there was this, it still baffles me now, and I think I can understand why they changed it. So retail used to be, you wanted to engage in conversation and find out and choose the appropriate thing for the person, and sometimes there wasn't the appropriate thing for them, and sometimes you'd be like, well, this isn't for you, this isn't for you, maybe just get this white dwarf for the moment and see how you get on, and then see if there's anything there that you like. So it wasn't about selling, as mad as that sounds, and I guess the Lord of the Rings era kind of helped that, because all this money was pouring in for workshop, for the license and stuff to make. Obviously they paid the license, but they were getting so much kickback from making these games and people buying them because they've seen the movies, that they were less concerned about that. But then when Lord of the Rings ended and you had like the dip, which was a really bad time for workshop from a employment point of view, because lots of people lost their jobs during that time. But I know you had Mark Wells on a few months back, and he made a great analogy, because like when Lord of the Rings was at its height and people were coming in, he was like, it's like the Battle of Pelennor Fields. We've just been killing orcs. Killing orcs is easy, they're dead easy to kill. So that was like just the customers just flooding in. He's like, well, we're now having to deal with mummoks now. And that's harder. That's a lot harder to deal with, because we're not getting as many customers in. So this is the bit now where we have to reform the line and fight some mummoks. So it's going to be a lot harder. This wasn't about like laying staff off. This was more like how you conducted yourself in store, how you had to deal with the conversations. So there's a lot more work involved, and to push the sale and do add-on sales and this, that, and the other. And I found that hard. I found that really hard, because I liked having conversations. I liked talking about hobby and getting people engaged from a hobby point of view, but when it turned more into sales, that's where I really struggled. And I know Duncan did. A couple of the guys in our team didn't. They went on to work for Egg for a time, and because they like that kind of side of things. That's I guess how they I guess they found a comfort zone in that, or they were just okay doing it. Whereas I just really struggled, because I was always like, oh, but you could buy this, but only if you want to. You don't have to. You don't have to. But if you wanted to, you could. It was always like that, very apologetic. Whereas, because before it was just like, yeah, you buy what you want. This is a cool set, but this is the cheaper set. This is like, if you're just starting off, just get this £1 set. But if you really want to go a bit further on, you can get if you can afford it, you can get the £2 set. What's that up there? Oh, that's the £250 set. You don't want to talk about that. Anyway, let's carry on talking about the £2 set. So it was a bit more chilled. Whereas then when the dip after Lord of the Rings, and I guess the strategy battle, not the strategy battle game, the D'Agostini part works came out, that kind of brought some more people back in, but we were very cautious of that, and we had to be very careful about how we it wasn't, again, like treat everyone like orcs and just sell. You still have those good conversations, still try and promote the hobby and get them to come back and do follow-on sales and sign up for events and stuff. And that I guess that was the thing that I didn't mind, was signing people up for like beginner courses or Saturday games, because that was just fun. Just people are bringing their things that they've just bought and painted to an event to play games with. And I'd say if there was one thing in my time at retail, it was running the big games. They were hard work, and we all found them quite hard work. But when you got it right, it was great. So I always used to hate the 40k ones, because people were just savage and they'll bring horrible stuff. But the Warhammer ones and the Lord of the Rings ones, everyone was very narrative in what they brought and very narrative in how the story was conducted. But 40k was just full of, it was like barbarians. Like, I'm bringing Angron. I'm bringing you got Angron. It was like, yeah, I converted him out of like 25,000 demon princes. They're like, okay, we've got no rules for that, but we'll make something up. And then someone would just bring like an army of Terminators because they could. I was like, you meant to bring a squad. I was like, this is a squad. It's 50 Terminators. I was like, oh, great. So yeah, it was the Wild West when it came to 40k, but still fun.
Would you have been running stuff during because like the Eye of Terror and the Storm of Chaos, the big global summer campaigns? I mean, what were they like?
They were great. Eye of Terror, although it was 40k and it was a bit of a beast to juggle, because and well, I say beast because the big games for that was overcrowded. At times would have like 50 kids come in to play in the 40k game, and we could get a 12x6 table max in the store, so it was a real struggle. So you had to have like people step in, move their things, step out to let others step in, and that was like during the Eye of Terror campaign it got even bigger, so we had to like try and like balance out the numbers a bit, like okay, we have to do 2 games a day of the same game to deal with the numbers. But that was the era when Colonel Peach was born as well. Colonel Peach was a colonel of a Imperial Guard regiment. And at the time, I don't know why, I had a goatee, Jordan. I don't know why I had a goatee, but I did. And I discovered the longer I grew the goatee, the more ginger I got. So I discovered I've got a ginger beard. But I made a model based on that. And it was very much akin to the Storm of Chaos vaulting, because how vaulting like ascended 3 different times. It was like blacksmith, then in armor, and then like super vaulting. Colonel Peach did that as well. He had like 3 versions of Colonel Peach. Because I did kill a bad in the Despoiler in combat once. I mean, it was a big game, so no one cared. But yeah, Peach has killed a bad in the Despoiler. That's how good he is. But yeah, we had like cool stories and campaigns that were linked to those campaigns as well. I think the Eye of Terror was fun, but I remember we had a lot more cooler narrative hooks with Storm of Chaos, and that I think that's something to be said as well. A lot of stores were known for their game system, so you'll be like, oh, we're the 40k store, or we're the Warhammer store. I think Workshop Derby, at least, because like Neil was really into Warhammer and Lord of the Rings. I was really into 40k and Lord of the Rings. Duncan was really into Warhammer and Lord of the Rings, and there was other people that were really into, like, with all the staff we had, they all had like a super strength, and then like something, because I think we all liked Lord of the Rings, so it was a Lord of the Rings store, but none of the other systems suffered as much because you had strong leads in that following from different staff members that would like lift that up. So when we did games, they were like, right, I'm going to run a really cool Warhammer game, like, cool, fantastic. I'm going to run a really cool Lord of the Rings game, cool, fantastic. So yeah, it was quite well balanced. Warhammer always suffered a bit anyway in general during that time, because Lord of the Rings was known as the second game system, because it like came from nowhere and suddenly just took over Warhammer from like numbers of selling, and got quite close to 40k as well. So yeah, we made sense to be quite knowledgeable in Lord of the Rings, but it's also a cracking game system as well. So all of us were big fans of that. But yes, it was good doing those campaigns. There was a lot of global campaigns, because there was the Nemesis Crown, there was the Fallen Medusa as well, which both of those fell on their arse and didn't really do much with. Like the Fallen Medusa, this summer a planet will die. Yeah, it's a made up one you just made up and they're going to kill off. Of course it's going to die. And then the Nemesis Crown, I was part of like the team that was like leading that, and I was like asking questions all the time, sending like messages out to like the other members that were like running this, because like, oh, we need someone from retail who likes gaming. Oh, get that guy from Derby, apparently he does some stuff. So I was like pulled into this team, and I was like, no one knew what was going off, and like I had all these stores ringing up going, what's going off in Nemesis Crown? I was like, I have no idea. I keep asking, what do you need to know? They'll be like, oh, need to know this, need to know this. So I'll ask the questions next time we have the meeting. And I got to the meeting and I asked these questions about, oh yeah, we're not worried about that, it's probably going to die anyway, no one seems to be interested in it. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, because it feels like almost the golden era of the summer events kind of peaked in 2003, 2004 with Eye of Terror and Storm of Chaos. And maybe, because the amount of Games Workshop investment in those events was enormous.
Yes.
And there was there were wide-ranging releases, there's miniatures, there's books, there's all this sort of stuff. And there were supposedly storyline consequences for the settings and the world. And it kind of feels like maybe there were some decisions taken during the course of the creation of those events that maybe pushed things a bit further than people were comfortable with in their head office, maybe, and then it was really scaled back following that.
I think after Storm of Chaos, because like, oh, the results, this guy's died, that's not what we expected, we'll have to rewrite that. And obviously, with the end times, that was rewritten again. But I think it was scaled back, certainly. I think that did have an impact on it. But also, I think the teams changed a bit as well. So some of the people that were quite familiar, or at least veterans of running those previous campaigns, didn't with the Fallen Medusa. It was just like a brand new team. So
Sure.
and I used to find this for like games days as well, when you'd have like for a long time you'd have a guy who'd run games days, and so he'd learn from his mistakes from the previous year and tweak them, and then the next year would like tweak them, then the next year tweak them, and they weren't always, well thought out decisions and tweaks, but he knew what was right and what worked and what didn't work, and sometimes could rule with an iron fist, but it worked well. And then like later on you'd like go, oh, Peachy, you're new to the design studio as a manager, you're running games day this year. I'm like, am I? I've never done that. Can I not have help? It's like, who did it last year? Oh, this guy. What did he remember? Oh, it was his first year as well. So I was like, cool, this sounds like a terrible idea. Can we not all get together and like come up with some ideas? It was Fest actually, when I was doing some organizing some stuff for Fest. So it used to be like, if you were new, you got the short straw of running the studio's events or whatever. Which was not the wisest decision. I think have someone that's good at it and likes doing it, but I think that might have been it. People didn't like doing it. I think it was a lot of hard. Well, I found it a lot of hard work.
Well, when did you transition actually over from retail into the head office and sort of move into the design studio?
So it was an interesting transition. I was still enjoying Derby, but as money making, we were profitable. We were making money, but we weren't making the numbers that they'd like. So you had to be like 14% like for like. You have to have like so much profit in comparison to last year, and I'm like, but most of this area is closing down and people don't want to come down here because it's a slum. And that was you can't use excuses like that. That's just an excuse. Everyone should want a reason to come to your shop. And we had a new manager take over, a regional manager. It was a bit more of a bit harder and a bit unsympathetic to, I wouldn't even say excuse, just facts. People just didn't want to come to Sadlergate because it was full of drunks, it was full of tramps, it looked like tumbleweed was blowing down. It wasn't a very nice place to be, and certainly bank holidays was horrible. So we always used to lock the door when we had like Sunday beginners, and if someone knocked at the door, then we'd open it. Normally I like an open door policy, but yeah, sadly it got to the point where it was a bit like it's better now. But yeah, for a short time, and with the pressures of selling and the sales side of things becoming more saley and more cold, I just really struggled with it. And I had a conversation with my new regional, who basically just didn't want me to be a manager anymore, and that was fine. I didn't want to be a manager anymore. But so we made this decision to move over to Warhammer World. So I was going to be a full-timer. I moved over to Warhammer World because it wasn't that much of a commute. And my old manager, Chris Pritchard, who recruited me, was the manager at Warhammer World, and he was like, cool, I'll take you. I was like, cool, thank you, that's very kind. I'd be at a loose end if you didn't. So I worked there for a few months. The intention was, and this is whether it's right or wrong, and I do think it's a bit wrong, but if you're within the Warhammer World sort of circuit, then you're more likely to find all the cool jobs that go off. If you're in retail, you don't tend to know about it. It's better now because they send out the retail newsletter with all the jobs that are advertised on on email, but during that time that you didn't know about it. It wasn't something you were told. You were a retail staff member until you died or they found someone better. So, or unless you moved and you were lucky to go to Warhammer World and then discovered there are other jobs that you can apply for. And that's what I discovered when I got to Warhammer World. There was the studio recruiting army painters. I was like, but normally they only have like high-end painters for the box packaging. They want people to paint. I like painting armies. I do that. I used to do it for the cabinets. I'm going to apply for this job. At the time, I was also applying for the police because I kind of wanted to get away from retail, because retail very much become something I didn't want to be in anymore. As much as I enjoyed working with my old manager and working at One World, it was not for me anymore. So I was like looking to go elsewhere, and I was applying for the police, and then this job came up, and I was like, this sounds fun. So I basically did my application. Got offered an interview, did the interview, and that was interesting because you have like a couple of different things you do. Like do a little bit of painting, you do a little bit of converting, you talk to some of the other members of the team, plan up a gaming board with them, and then you have like an interview with the main boss as well. And it was all very fun, but also quite scary.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh my God, this is scary. But the most comfortable I was during that day was when I was like given a flagellant. It was like, right, just want you to paint a flagellant, give me some background. I was like, oh, I could do that. So I could do that with my eyes closed. I like painting flagellants and I like giving people background because that's my bag. So I did that. And yeah, I got the job. I was genuinely surprised I got the job. And when I look back now at my entries, because you have to sometimes, we kept this going when I was managing as well, you'd send out like a box of Space Marines to people and like, I want you to paint a unit of salamanders, or I want you to do this. Here's a brief. This is what we kind of want you to do it for. And I kind of got why you do it as well, because it was an extra set of models to paint to use for photography and an army as well. So that was quite handy. That's why they used to like, you're all painting salamanders, because weirdly we're doing a book about salamanders soon. We need some extra guys in the background. So if they weren't great, they wouldn't get used, but most of them tend to be quite good. So I look back at those paint jobs I did and they're terrible. And I don't know how I got a job, Jordan. I really don't. I thought they were all right. But I learned a lot. And that was the thing. Like, as soon as I moved from Warhammer World to the design studio, within that first 2-3 weeks, my painting just skyrocketed. And it's not like an arrogance thing, but I thought I was an okay painter when I was in retail, because I used to do it all the time. I used to like painting. I'd been doing it for a long time as a child. So I thought I was quite confident with my painting. I thought I was okay. I knew I wasn't like an award-winning painter that would get like awards and, you know, Slayer swords and like golden demons and stuff, but adequate enough for it to be nice for cabinets in retail and on gaming tables and stuff. But yeah, the jump in skill level was insane. After just 2 weeks of just sitting in a chair for 7.5 hours, 8 hours a day, being surrounded by super talented people, yeah, it's inevitable you're going to get better real quick.
Yeah. I mean, is that like, because I'm a terrible painter, and I've never really sat down in a chair for 7 hours to sort of learn how to paint. But is that like a skill, that step up? Is it new techniques? Is it getting a steadier hand? What are the things that define the sort of escalating skill level of a painter?
I think it is exposure, and muscle memory, certainly. So the more you're doing something, you're going to get better at it. So I've discovered I'm getting better at editing because I do it more. And there's this whole thing, like if you did like something for 30 minutes every day for 30 days, you'll almost become like really competent in that skill, regardless of what skill it is. So I knew about color theory, so I had that advantage. I knew about painting models. I knew about the backgrounds. But being exposed to painting all day, every day, I'd not done that for a long time, if ever, because most of the times I'd probably have done like maybe a day here and there during the summer holidays or half terms, or, a few hours in the evening with my dad or whatever. But to do it 8 hours a day for like a week, and then 8 hours a day for another week, and then suddenly see day 1 to day 14, that muscle memory kicks in. You get a steadier hand. You're surrounded by people that give you like little hints and tips. They're like, oh yeah, I can see what you're doing there, but maybe you want to make that highlight a bit thicker because it makes the next highlight a little bit easier. So you're like, oh, okay. And then, highlighting. Daz was great. Daz Latham. He was obviously at the time with Warhammer heavy metal, and he'd wander by every now and again. I guess he felt a responsibility because he was like the lead painter of heavy metal, but there's like an army painter here now, and maybe I can help him out. And I was very receptive to all sorts of feedback, and he gave me loads of feedback. I never knew what a glaze was until he sat with me and showed me how to glaze stuff. So I was like, why is this new devilry? And I don't do it as competent as what like high-end painters would be, but I do it in a way that works for me, and there's a bit more of a speedier tint to just like knock back some highlights and dark and lighten up some shades and stuff like that, and highlighting reds and different ways of like punching out colors and stuff. So in the space of like a month, you just drop by every now and again and just chuck in a little gem of knowledge. And then Dave Andrews across from me, Mark Jones being a great scenery builder, Dave being a great scenery builder, but also I think Dave's done every job apart from retail at workshop. So certainly from a studio point of view. And then there was a guy called Neil Hodgson who stood across from me as well. So he was at the time, if you remember the Empire Heraldry book, he was doing a lot of work on that. And he was basically making that a thing, and that was his job. And then he moved on to like the other ones later on. But as an artist, but also as a hobbyist, he had loads of like opinions and ideas on how color works and this, that, and the other. So I had all these people. And what I found really interesting, and this was something I didn't expect, was everyone was saying the same thing.
Mm.
It was all coming from the same hymn sheet. So it was not like, you suddenly get like Neil would say something and then Dave would say something that contradicted that. Then Mark would come along and say something that contradicted that. Usually one of them would say something, you'd be like, cool, I'll take that on board. And then Dave will walk behind you, go, oh, don't forget to do this because it does this. I'm like, that's the same thing that guy said. Clearly, I need to do this. I've decided not to do it because I was an idiot, and now I should do it because 2 people have told me to do it. So yeah, it was a great time, and I learned a lot in such a short space of time. And I guess I showed the manager at the time, Pete Foley. He was managing the hobby team, as they were called, and the heavy metal painters. He basically made a gamble saying we need army painters to join to get stuff painted, because they were looking at like expanding and making like bigger games. This is before the Horde unit appeared, so I know they'll prep him for that. So they wanted more. That's a lot of strain on heavy metal to paint like 40 figures to a high-end level. So he wanted to get some people in, and it could. I mean, I wasn't given a temporary job; I was given a permanent job, but I guess it was like a gamble. And then within like a couple of weeks, that gamble paid off, because they would put stuff in front of me and I'll get it done, and I'd like have some feedback and I'll make the tweaks. But I guess the thing that sold it, and it's a great little anecdote, at the time I was a bit like stressed, but he basically put this big tray with loads of Uruk-hai on it that was sprayed black, and he was like, I need to get these painted. And I was like, oh, when do you need them for? I was like, by the end of the day. He did it as a joke, and I now know that I do probably have some kind of, I'm somewhere on the spectrum, so I took that literally, and I was like, oh my god, he needs to get this done by the end of the day. Okay, so I changed my painting approach, and I sprayed all the Uruk-hai silver. I washed them all, got the old hairdryer out, picked out all the skin that was like one tone of brown, the loincloths were like another tone of brown, washed those bits again, got them all based, and then at the end of the day I painted 142 Uruk-hai with grass tufts on them and sand and stuff like that. And they weren't pretty, but as a block they looked quite good. And I went up to Pete and put them in front of his desk. I was like, there you go, I got them done. And he looked at me, he was like, what the, I was joking. and like all the managers were like, have you just done that in a day? I was like, well, you told me to. I thought, that's my job. So that was the moment when they were like, yeah, we need more army painters. So that's when then Duncan got a job. And then we got a guy called Steve, who originally applied for heavy metal, but he painted some really nice armies. And then what we started to learn or do initially was back rankers as well. So I was doing some back rankers for the packaging. So you get heavy metal will do like the first rank really well. Maybe one of the trainees would do the second rank, so they're learning the ropes, and then it'd be like, Peachy, can you do the last 2 ranks? So like Skaven is a great example. I would use that as my pull-out example. Like, we look at the clan rats and the storm vermin on the old box packaging. The first 2 ranks are heavy metal, the last 2 ranks are mine. And that's the same for like the beastmen and like some empire units and stuff like that. So initially that was one of the roles I fulfilled. Did lots of stage by stages for White Dwarf, and then I think it was kind of after we hired Rhodes, actually. Well, I say we, I didn't hire him. I was not involved in that. I was just like, hey, it's my mate. I used to work with him. And we were then asked to make different armies as well. So I think it was the Ogre Kingdoms, but when that came out, we basically, heavy metal was doing just stuff for the packaging. I was like, I want to do an Ogre Kingdoms army. I'm not going to do the named characters because heavy metal will obviously paint them better, but I will do a leader or a bunch of leaders to lead this army, and then we'll base them like this. And then that's when we started getting more involved with the photography the photography department. Right. And then they would like go, oh, we really could do with like loads of units of bulls, because normally we get like 1 unit of bulls and like this unit and then that unit. We've got plenty of nobblers, we don't need lots of nobblers, but if we could get like 3 or 4 units of bulls. I was like, how big do you want the units? So like, well, the Horde rules out now, so if you could do 18, because ogres would like be 6 and 6. I was like, yeah, do you want 2 units of 18? They're like, yeah, I could do 2 units of 18. So put that into our plans. And then that's when we started to move into actually the army painting team would paint a separate army to then go in the book and then kind of balance out. And we would add stuff as well still to the back rankers if we needed to, but and then it was there was more content. I think it was because one of the execs looked at the Vampire Counts book, and at the very back it's like Manfred von Carstein leads his mighty war host, and there was like 12 figures at most, probably 20, and I was like, that is not the definition of a mighty war host, you ask me. But and I guess that guy that read it was just like, this is rubbish, we need more figures painted. So that's when we started like doing lots more. I'm sure I can find it somewhere. It still makes me laugh when I look at it. But yeah, it was, lots to learn, lots to develop, but it happened quite rapidly. And, you know, I learned stuff, but I also passed on some of my knowledge to people around me as well. You know, I wouldn't say it was a lot, but my arty field, I mean, Dave was an artist anyway, but I'd like try it. I guess I was more, because I was new, I was more willing to try new stuff and weird things. Whereas, you know, when you've been sat in the seat for a long time, you're like, I know what works, I'm going to keep to that because I know it works. But then like this new whippersnapper turn, we're going, I'm going to try stuff with masking tape. I'm like, what? Are you mental? I was like, no, maybe. I don't know. Give me a minute. See how we go on. But yeah, great time. And that was that would have been 2007 and that was the start of the golden era, and I think that probably ended about 2015, my golden era. So it's about a good 7-8 years. Great time to be alive in the studio.
What was so golden about it? Was it just the things that were being worked on, the miniatures, the vibe?
The vibe, the things that we worked on. We did have a split with the studios kind of a few years before it ceased to be the golden era, and we moved down to miniatures. So we used to have the design studio. It was one studio, and it all worked as I thought it worked as a well-oiled machine. So you'd have in meetings, let's say we're doing like the Empire army book, you'd have like a writer in the team, you'd have like a heavy metal painter, an army painter, you'd have a designer, a sculptor, you'd have an engineer who's doing the tooling, you'd have obviously like the scheduler, an artist as well, and you'd talk about what's going off with the book, what's the vibe of the book, what we're going to do with the book, how does it all work, and then I'll be like, oh, I'd love to do an Altdorf army because we always show freaking Talabheim, and we've got Karl Franz as a plastic model. It makes sense. Maybe I get it. You know, it's the Empire, they have all the states, but maybe we should have his guys from Altdorf maybe as like the backbone of the army. That would be quite cool. And maybe like a unit of Caribou Greatsword. So I'd like to do this unit, I'd like to do this, and then heavy metal, like, oh, we'd like to do some different colors with like the beasts. So we've got like, we need to do Karl Franz and Deathclaw, but I'd like to do, you know, get the team to do this for like the other Elector Count want to do this with the wizard, the Amber Wizard that's on it. And then when you start talking about all the different kits that are coming out, showing like some of the early, so the sculptor were there going, yeah, we've got these demigriff guys. They're basically like, you know, griffin things without wings, but they're steeds, and we've got really baroque looking armor. When I was thinking about the color schemes, I was thinking like black armor with like gold trim and that kind of stuff, like, you know, the old baroque style. And they'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Maybe colored lacquer armor, that would be quite nice as well, like maybe reds and stuff, this, that, and the other. So you get the sculptor thrown in there, 2-penny piece, then you get the artist going, oh, I'd like to do like a shot of like an Empire State Troop with like a castle behind it, all on fire. What the adversaries we should be fighting in this, or beasts, chaos, usually chaos. So you'd have this great sort of melting pot of ideas, and then we'd go away, we'd start planning the project, because this was done like probably a couple of months before we actually start the project. And then we'd also know what resins we'd get, because at the time you wouldn't get plastics for all the new kits, you'd get resins. So that then gives the caster time to go away and cast. And he'd be like, how many demigriff do you need? I'll be like, well, I'd like to do unit 6. Okay, so heavy metal will need like at least 6, because they need to do 3 for the box packaging and then a couple of color variants and stuff like that. But they always used to get the first cast because they were the better cast, which made sense because they're going close-up photography. I'd get the reduced like later on cast, which were a bit more naff, but then you could hide that with some green stuff and a bit of a foil and a bit of thick paint, which was fine because I didn't get close-up photography, and that's kind of right because you shouldn't. But yeah, and that went on for a long time, that process as the design studio. And then eventually it split because miniatures were like, we want to do our own thing. And then I still don't know why, if I'm honest, the real reasons for the split, but it felt like a lot of little satellite nations wanted their own little bit. So miniatures went off downstairs, and as an army painting team, we were dragged down there. I didn't think we should be. I thought we should have stayed with the books because we did stuff for photography in the books, whereas heavy metal did stuff for box packaging, which was a miniature related thing. So it made sense for them to go down, but not for the army painters to go down. But we went down, and then it became a bit convoluted. like the messages and like the processes. So we would do armies, Jordan, that never got used. We'd be sitting painting an army because the manager was like, yeah, we're doing like some new models for Tau. You're going to paint up some Tau. We're going to do an army of Tau. I'm like, cool. And then we do an army of Tau. And it's like, you'd send up to books and box games. They were like, we're not doing Tau. We're not planning to do Tau for at least 6 months. What we're supposed to do with these? Cool. All right, we'll crack on. What's next? Oh, dwarfs. Are you doing dwarfs? And luckily, I knew a lot of people because we're quite good friends upstairs. So we'd like going, to our manager, like, we've heard that they're doing a dwarf book. Makes sense to do some of the dwarfs that are going to be coming out soon. May want to see if we can get them a bit earlier so we can start doing like some more stuff for the dwarf. And he'd be like, oh, I'll have a word. So every now and again, you could like have a little bit of a conversation with people upstairs and like gently nudge. But there was like, we did a wood elf army and no one needed it.
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah. Sounds like it got quite disjointed then.
Yeah. I mean, like for instance, like you'd have the writers upstairs going, right, okay, what's miniatures bringing up? Oh, they brought up a Necron and a random undead figure. Cool. What we're supposed to do with these? But eventually it got better. Communication improved. But for a long time, it was very much ad hoc. You just hope you get some useful stuff from down in miniatures that we can make use of for our books. So, in fact, this is true. They ended up using in books and box games, they ended up using the collections of the staff because they weren't getting what they needed. So a lot of the actual like photographers and hobbyists like games developers and stuff like that had to use their own collections because they just didn't have the resource. And that's when Pete Foley made a new painting team upstairs, which was when I don't know if you remember, there was a bunch of paint guides, mostly for 40k to start off with. And it was to coincide with a codex. So like the very first one we worked on was I think it was the Space Wolf one. And that was to coincide with a new Space Wolf codex coming out. And then we did Dark Eldar, which was to coincide with Dark Eldar codex. And then a bunch of people were applying for the job. I got the job, my mate Steve got the job, and then a guy from retail got it as well. And we're in this little team. We called it the Fishbowl because in this little room. It was kind of small and very glassy. And we just would paint a bunch of stage by stages. So there'll be an army being done by the guys downstairs. Weirdly, they'd do an army for us, which we'd communicate with. Heavy Metal would do an army, and then we would do. The one that Heavy Metal would do would be supported by downstairs. That's right. And then Steve would do an army. I would do an army, and then the other guy would do an army. And you'd do like a character that's kit bashed. You'd do like, it would only be like a battle force, like a small strike force. So it wasn't loads, but you do all the stages for all the different things. So like if there was a vehicle, you'd do some stages for that. And they were really good books. Unfortunately, they weren't promoted particularly well. And they were always in shrink wrap. So the staff couldn't open them. So they couldn't promote them. And it wasn't until I walked into Warhammer one day and I was like, oh yeah, the best way to paint like Dark Eldar is if you do it this way. And I'd be like, oh, there's a book up there that teaches you. And the staff member was like, is they? And I was like, yeah, that book. It's the How to Paint Dark Eldar book. and then he got it and he sold it to the guy, and the guy bought it and they opened it in the shop together. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was like, how often is this happening? And that people didn't know these books existed. So they didn't do very well, surprisingly. And then so the idea was you buy a codex. What's an extra 12 quid on top of a codex? Well, at that time, the codexes were probably a little bit more affordable than what they are now, but people just didn't want to buy them. It wasn't the add-on sale they wanted. So, but people would buy the combat cards, like objective cards and stuff like that, tactics cards. So the manager was like, maybe we should make them cheaper but smaller. And I was like, oh, interesting. So if we did a £6 book, but it was only like 100 pages long, paperback, maybe that would be an add-on sale that people buy, because he was very much into his stage by stage painting as well. So then we moved to like doing a bunch of those. Some of those were 40k, some of those were to coincide with the Prospero Burns box set that came out, and then there's a bunch for Age of Sigmar as well. And they were really good, but not as comprehensive as the originals. And I really love the originals because it was really nice converting a character that was like just random. Well, I'm just going to keep loads of stuff together and I'll make a cool character. I'm going to paint him. I'm going to give him a name. And then an artist will trundle along and go, hi, I'm Alex Boyd. I've been told to draw your model. I'm like, Alex It's point to join my model. I don't know why I introduced himself as Alex Boy, because I've known you for years, but thanks. So he'd like take the model away, or like Kevin Chinwood, and then like a couple of weeks later they'll come back with a vignette of the model that you've kit bashed. You'd be like, oh,
amazing.
That's amazing. I've got art of the thing I built and painted badly. Amazing. But yeah, it was a bit disjointed, I think, for a long time. Then, like I say, Pete made this small team, and then weirdly I dodged a bullet. I've been quite lucky in my career. I've either dodged lots of bullets or just bumbled through and done quite well, because that team was then made redundant, which was a shame. But Pete was like, well, not having that, let's hire them all and then bring them upstairs and make our team bigger. And I was like, I like where your head's at. So they all came upstairs, and then he asked me to be his top gun, which I hated. He was like, you're top gun, you're going to be in charge of them. I was like, okay. Oh God. Right. And it was a bit rocky to start off, because there was a few people that wanted to be like the team leader and wanted to show their worth as well. So there was a little bit of like tiny amounts. I mean, it wasn't like nastiness or anything like that. It was just tiny amounts of like clashing of opinions and stuff like that. But eventually we all settled into it, and we ended up getting a good schedule going. And I tried lots of different things, because scheduling retail staff was one thing, scheduling creatives was something very different. So I had to really think about how I'd do that, how we'd go about planning the schedule and this, that, and the other, and how everyone would fit into a project. It panned out, actually, this person's really good at painting those, so we get them on that project. We can like have another project going off here, we can have another project going off there. But when you had like yourself and 9 other painters, it became really easy to get stuff painted. But the only downside to that was I had to become more hands-off from a painting point of view, which I really liked. I like painting, so I had to focus more on the managey side of stuff, and then became a manager of the team, which was great. And then the photographers, which was weirdly at the time, so I'm just going at,
I'm enjoying it. I'm all in.
So managing the photographers seemed quite daunting, or at least the books and box games photographers, because I don't know anything about photography. I like to take photos of my models, and we used to do photography for the stage by stage, because we had our own little shots and white setup, which we were shown by one of the photographers on how to use. And we used Lightroom, so I understood how Lightroom worked, I understood how like doing shots and white worked. But from a photography point of view, these guys had a lot of work to do, so they had to do all the dress setting for like the shots in the book. So you had like these double page shots of like big battles going on, you have like the data sheet and war scroll shots and stuff. So they had a lot of workload, and they had lots of things to do. And Foley said to me, he's like, oh, could you manage those as well? There was this notion that it was like a boys' locker room in the photography studio, and everyone just dossed about. So I was asked to go in and stop them from dossing about. What panned out was they were just given way too much work, and they were getting a bit grumpy, and they were trying their best to get everything done. So when people would walk in, when you're a photographer and you have to do lots of shots, you have to stack them. And when you're stacking them, you like do a shot at the back that's in focus, then you reset bits up in the middle, and you take a shot of that, and then that's in focus. Then you do a lot of stuff at the front, you take shots of that, and then that's in focus. And then you have to wait like an hour for it to all stack and render and this, that, and the other. So they'll be sat like on the phone waiting for it to render, or sometimes they'll be checking an email or whatever. So managers will walk in and see all these guys sat around not doing any photography. But what actually doing is they're waiting for the thing to stack, or they're waiting for the thing to render, or they're doing something else. So it panned out they actually were given not enough time to do their work, and we ended up finding a way of, because I literally said to the guys, like, how do you do it? What do you do? Show me like how to set up into double page shots, because apparently you get too much time on them. 5 days is too much. And they all looked at me, I was like, 5 days is not enough. And I was like, interesting, tell me more. So I was like, well, 5 days is okay if it's like 100 figures with like some scenery. When such and such is asking us to do 500 figures, and we're getting told off when like a model's facing the wrong way and we have to reshoot the entire shot, or if like, because you've got the gutter in the book, if like a model somehow goes into the gutter, we have to reshoot those as well, because there was this thing where you'd have like them doing the photography, the repro guys would then go, oh, that model's in the middle, you can't see it, reshoot. And there was no sort of like conversation, it was just like this order given by the scheduler to reshoot the entire shot. And I was like, did no one have a question and just go, no, it's one figure out of 500, no one cares, it's in the gut and no one's going to see it. So there was a lot of like just spending some time with them, seeing their side of it and how they had to do it. And yeah, there was a few efficiencies for sure, but a lot of it was just they were just massively misunderstood and given no time to do the stuff they were given. And they made lots of cool tactical decisions, if you like, if you're like using management speak, to try and get things done. So like when they did the data sheet photography and the war scroll photography, they used the same setup. They just swapped models out because they had to do 200 data sheets for like the Grand Alliance books for each faction. And it's like, I can't change the setup with every shot. That would take forever. So they just used the same setup and they just swapped figures out, took some shots, swapped some figures out, took some shots. I mean, I do that with my my videos. It makes sense. It's a great efficiency. But yeah, 500 figures on a board that you have to stack and you have to make sure they're all facing the right way. And this is the other thing as well, Jordan. I never got this until when I went into that room. So when you see the shot on the screen, it looks amazing. Everyone looks like quite close and they're all fighting. But when you flip that and look at it from a bird's eye point of view, the models are actually quite far away from each other because it's all to do with like a perspective and, you know, like the, well, I guess, yeah, sense of perspective. Yeah. When you're looking for a camera, what would be really close is too close to the point that it's merged with the figure. So you have to go like 4 or 5 inches away from that character to look like you're next to the character. So yeah, it's all about the illusion. So they're constantly like putting a figure down, then have to go to the viewfinder to check it. It wasn't until later on when we got like monitors that you could actually wire up to your camera so they could actually just look at a big screen and then move the model and go, oh, perfect, that works. So yeah, it was mental. So I felt bad. But what worked really well was we ended up doing a lot of the armies and stuff with those guys that worked for them as well. It worked for us. So they're like, oh, when you're doing a boards are great. We like boards, but we like lots of low level bits of debris and scenery because it helps cover bases, or if there's like a chip in a bit of a model, or the base rim looks a bit untidy, or there's just something that we have to make the models hover to make them look a bit taller next to someone. We can't really hide those sometimes. So if you can make low level scenery, it looks really good. So when we used to do like scenery boards, we do all like an accompaniment of these little extra bits for them to use, almost like a tray of hors d'oeuvres for them. Like, here you go, sir. Here's a load of little low level scenery for you. But yeah, that was great. I love that. I love working with the photographers and the army painters because we had a great symbiotic relationship going on with the books. And you know, we were doing stuff that made sense for the book, but also doing stuff that made sense for photography and what the viewers would see. And then John and I got asked to manage the entire photography studio, which is a whole other story, which was the biggest headache I've ever had. And that's why I left the studio and moved to paint toy soldiers again, because it was just too much. To give you a short run of it, when you are managing your own photographers, it's easy. When you're managing other managers' staff, but you can't manage them, all you can do is help them. But when they're not being helpful, you can't do anything about it. But also when it's an entire department that isn't a department, it's a collection of departments and there's no budget. So when something gets broken, you have to then go around and beg different departments to see who's paying this month for a new camera, and none of them want to pay, including your own department. So you're just like, so we've got 2 broken cameras that no one's prepared to pay for. We're supposed to have 7 setups. We have 9 photography teams with 7 setups, but we're now down to 5 setups. I can't keep making, you know, I can't be biased and keep like giving priority to the books and box game photographers, because no one's going to respect me for that, because that's wrong. So I have to like shuffle it in, and then I'll get like a stick from my manager going, why are all my photographers not on the photography doing the thing? I was like, because we got 2 cameras broken, no one's going to pay for them, and I can't keep, you know, putting hours as priority. Well, you're in charge, you can do what you want. I was like, yeah, that's why that's wrong. So I'm going to carry on doing it the right way. And until someone gets them fixed. And it wasn't until then that people would actually, when photographers weren't getting a setup, that someone would come, oh, we'll pay this month then. So it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. I hated it.
I mean, that sounds like such a different world, I suppose, from where you were like in previous roles, both within the design studio and in retail. Because I'm curious about your like relationship with the hobby, because that sounds like you've now moved in that role into a managerial position. There's a lot of corporate politics. There's a lot of that sort of stuff going on. Yeah. And you're so far away from the actual miniatures and the painting of and the playing with those miniatures. I mean, did it change your like feeling about the games and the hobby doing that kind of job?
Weirdly then, no, it wasn't until I went to marketing that's when that happened. So I still was quite active in the hobby, and I'd still jump in, even though I was told by my boss not to help out on projects and paint models. I still did because it needed doing. And you know, when like one of your staff members is like, I'm really struggling, and I don't think I've got enough time because they're either new or they've got too much. Of course, we'd jump in like building boards and stuff, but I used to do a lot of other Games Workshop related stuff. So if there was like I don't know, like we're doing like the team's doing lots of 40k stuff, I might be doing my own hobby. I think being hands off at that time as well, my hobby freed up a bit more and I was engaging with it more. But usually when I was like in a project, before I was like the manager or whatever, let's say I was doing the Empire Army, I'd probably do like World War II figures or do Lord of the Rings or do something that wasn't related to the day task for the next like month or two. So that really helped. So my engagement with the hobby never really suffered. I think it was just amplified a bit more because I was painting lots. And weirdly, I'd want to go home and do a bit more painting, but because I'd learned something new, or I'd like, oh, I really like, oh, I've tried this color scheme. Oh, I want to try that on something else.
Right.
So that kind of had its advantages in a weird way. And even when I was managing, I was still very active in the hobby. So I was very aware of like the narratives, the stories, the ideas of like, you know, what the army painting team are doing and how that works with the actual IP and stuff like that. So I was very into it still. It wasn't until I moved to marketing. Working with Duncan was great. Getting to do paint guides and painting again was amazing. Did that for a good couple of years where we did these how to paint guides. We did like what we call the tip of the days, where we do like a little paint guide every day, like how to paint a power sword, how to paint this color red armor or whatever. And then we did like some fun shows like Hangout and Hobby and all these other random weird little videos, like promotional videos. And then when marketing got a bit bigger and a bit more cocky, I guess, from a business point of view, there was a lot of like conversations like, I've noticed, Peachy, you're still talking about Warcry. Warcry was a month ago. We should be talking about Blood Bowl now. I was like, I don't care for Blood Bowl. I mean, I like Blood Bowl. I know people don't offend anyone. Blood Bowl's cool. Blood Bowl's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's not my hobby. I'll be like, I'm not interested in Blood Bowl. I want to carry on playing and painting Warcry. I like Warcry. So you'd have to like force it. It basically became like forced fun. Like you need to talk about this thing and be excited about it. Okay, I'm on board. And then I'd get excited about it, Jordan. I would generally get excited about some stuff like Kill Team would come out and I'd be like, oh, I've been told to do Kill Team. Cool. I'm going to do some Genes to the Cults. Oh, I'm not painting any Genes to the Cults. Actually, these are quite nice. I'm enjoying this. I start painting the Genes to the Cults. Right, that's it. Stop having fun with them. You need to have fun with these now. I'm like, oh my God. So it became a bit stale and I found my hobby really suffered during that time. And there was a point, probably like, I think a year before I left, where I just didn't do a hobby for a whole year. I didn't do any hobby. I was playing XCOM. I was like doing anything like drawing. I was doing anything other than painting. I refused to do any painting because I was sick and tired of it. And it was not because I was sick and tired of painting and sick and tired of the hobby. I was sick and tired of being told what I should like and what I shouldn't like, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. I did still do like the odd like fucking dice figure and the odd like sci-fi figure that wasn't Games Workshop related. But anything Workshop related, I just really struggled to get behind, except when I was at work and I had to do like the paint guides. Then I had to like really, like me and Joe, who was my editor and videographer at the time, I was just like, he was like, you're right. I'm like, just building the enthusiasm to paint another Space Marine, Joe. So I'm like, gotta do it for the kids and the people out there. They're expecting lots here. Give me a minute. I'll get the vibe. So it was hard for a time just to get that enthusiasm going, because I still have lots of love for the models and stuff and the kits, but I think it was because it was this forced fun and this weird drive from those above you going, you must like this now, and then when you've liked it enough, you now need to stop liking it and like the next thing. It's like, can't we just all have people in the department that all like a certain thing, and then when you want to know about that, you then ask them, and because that's how it worked in retail. I was the guard player, so if there was a customer and Duncan was talking to the customer, Duncan likes Blood Raven specifically, but he also likes Space Marines, so he doesn't know much about Imperial Guard at that moment in time, so I'll talk about Imperial Guard. So then you'd swap the conversations over with the kid, and then luckily the person you're talking to likes Tomb Kings and Duncan's a fan of Tomb Kings, so you do a little swapsy in the shop. It made sense because you play to your strengths. Whereas marketing was just full of very odd people with very odd decision-making skills that really knew how to like soak up the fun. We used to call them funnels, like a null of fun. So here comes the funnel. Here we go. What we've been told not to enjoy today and what to enjoy. Oh, cool. So yeah, it was hard. I found that really hard. And some people didn't mind it because it was just exposure to more hobby. But for me, I get invested in a thing. and hyper focused in a thing, and I really like the thing. And then, yeah, when you're suddenly like told like, nope, you can't do that anymore. I'm like, I find it really disjointing. So yeah, hard.
Right.
That was the only time I stopped.
Well, I was curious as well about what the sort of feeling you had towards being a sort of face of the company, I suppose, and becoming a sort of celebrity within the world of the hobby, and sort of, we'd gone from a place where, I guess, in White Dwarf there were always pictures of the designers and the painters and stuff like that, but there probably wasn't quite as much almost real-time access. You weren't seeing people in motion and seeing them talk and seeing them engage with audiences in quite the same way outside of a games day, for instance.
Yeah.
So what was that like, being one of the people in that kind of role, the bridge, I guess, between the community and the company?
So I think me and Duncan had a bit of preparation for that anyway, by being in retail and being the sort of center of that community and conducting yourself. Like I said earlier, you, when you're out and about, you are still a representative of Games Workshop. So we kind of built that skill up a little bit, and that confidence of like, I never and still don't see myself as a celebrity. I just see myself as a guy who likes painting toy soldiers, and now I just make videos on it. And I still find it wild people even follow my Patreon, let alone like, give me money for it. It's insane, but I love them all to bits. But at the time of moving from, because I guess it was, how's best to describe it? It was slow, like little baby steps. Like retail kind of got a feel of like being someone that people recognize in the street and want to come and talk to about the hobby, and like if they see you in the bus, they'll make a beeline for you and want to talk to you and engage with you. So there was a little bit of like, I guess, you got a bit of preparation for that, and then moving into the studios, like again, me and Duncan, kind of very similar, mirrored universes of like the not even mirrored because he didn't have a mustache and wasn't evil, but we kind of mirrored our careers together, and we'd go into the studio and then we'd get White Dwarfs and we'd be recognized at games day. So again, you're getting that familiar with that, you're understanding how you conduct yourself in those realms. I guess the big jump for me was when I moved to Warhammer TV, was the amount of how quickly it moved from like the odd conversation here to the odd conversation there to being recognized a bit more regularly, or like people reaching out into like my social medias and asking questions and like going, oh, you're that guy, I saw you the other day walking past, wanted to say hi and get a selfie, and selfies and stuff like that. It's like, I always find really like, oh, that's weird, why does people want, I'm just an Eggman, why do people want a photo of an Eggman? But apparently they do, and it was weird. I think the big thing for me was dealing with their hate, because you didn't get that really. We did a bit in White Dwarf, granted. So when we used to do stuff for White Dwarf, you'd get people like on Warseer or Daka that would give a nice review of the White Dwarf of that month, and sometimes you'd get the odd person that was very scathing of like myself or Duncan. They just didn't like me or Duncan. Like, oh, that guy's face is in it again, I hate that guy. I was like, I don't know what I've ever done to you, I'm very sorry. Whether it was like, I painted red instead of blue, I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm very sorry. So we kind of exposed to a small amount of that, but not to the point that when your things went on Facebook and then people just actively didn't like you because you were bold or whatever, or like, this guy shouldn't be allowed near schools. I'm like, come on, mate, I've got a child, I've got to take him to nursery. I'm supposed to do this. So there was just a lot of that. That's when I was aware of internet trolls and stuff like that, but seeing those kind of comments directed at you for no reason other than the fact that they're just very angry people was interesting. But I kind of built up I guess a robust barrier to it quite quickly. And then, Duncan, we would have conversations, like he'd sometimes get a bit like miffed with like some comments and stuff, and you could see it affected him, and like I'd get the odd one that affect me and we'd talk about it. But it was more just a part and parcel of the job. You knew that going into it. And then when we start getting new presenters join in, it was always that kind of like, just to let you know, no matter what you do, you're not going to please everybody. Regardless of how pretty you are or how nice you are, you may have like spent your entire life being a charity worker and saving everyone on the planet from death. Someone's going to hate you. Someone's going to say something really mean about you, and there's nothing you can do about it because the internet's full of mean people. That's just, you have to accept that. and don't respond and don't let it get to you. And it's hard, it's easy to say that than the reality. But yeah, so like when who God, we had loads of random people join. It's been so many people over the years, but when it moved to, I guess more contemporary, like when we did Warhammer Plus and we got the newer presenters for Warhammer TV, you know, it was a lot of like, you know, just it's going to happen. No, I can't. There's no like, I can't sugar the pill. It's going to happen, and you can see their reaction when they did see it happen. I mean, like Adam Langford, he spent loads of time before he worked just painting Death Watch. That was his Instagram. It still is. The majority of his Instagram is just painting Death Watch, and he's got a massive following for that, which is really impressive. And then he's a really good painter. He does one paint guide. People hate him because he's not Duncan. It's like, okay, cool. Just because you're not Duncan, they instantly hate you. They're not even looking at your model you're painting, mate. They're probably like looking at your face on the thumbnail. They've seen that you started painting on the territory that was Duncan's, and now they hate you for that. They're probably not going to watch the video because they're triggered by the fact that you exist. So they don't know how good you are at painting. So I won't worry about their feelings. Just trust the system. You'll be fine. So yeah, it was hard for a lot of people in dealing with the celebrity. And some people, I think it did get to their head a bit. There was a couple of people that I worked with that thought they were the bee's knees and used that sometimes to their advantage, which I think is immensely wrong. And they shouldn't have been allowed to do that, but they did, because that kind of thing affects people in different ways. But most of the people that workshop employ tend to be quite well vetted anyway, because you do go through like a bit of a process of like, I think it makes sense, but you employ personality over skill, which is probably why I got a job as a painter, maybe. But yeah, that's something I always did when I was an army painter. Like you look at the cover letter, you get a general gist for who they are, and then you make your decisions, like make your shortlist based on those, and then you start looking at the paintwork that they've done. Because we've had it before where we've hired someone that I think it was like Duncan's in, where they were looking to recruit. There was a guy who was really good at painting, and he was the worst person. He was like literally ripping into pieces like everybody in the department. When he was being recorded, I was like, this is not smart. So he's been recorded by like one of the guys, and he's just like, oh, that guy, he looks a bit of a knob. These brushes are shit. Excuse me. These brushes are rubbish. This paint's not very good. Oh my god, what kind of cowboys are running this business? This now. I mean, some of the things probably not far wrong with, but you just don't do that on the day when you're trying to get a job. And because he was just like very cocky about his paint, he's like, I don't know, these other people have got nothing on me. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna beat this. And it's just like, and you see the recording, you're just like, that's why you didn't get the job. Because you were a bit of an idiot, and you seem surprised. But yeah, so usually workshops quite good at that. But it is a hard. I mean, you've experienced this as well because you get that as well, don't you? I mean, it's been stopped in the streets, or like when you go to events and people want to chat to you and this that, and the other. It's big. It's very normalized now for me, in a weird way that. When someone stops you, I can sometimes tell that someone wants to talk to me, but I also don't want to be that guy that goes, did you want to ask me a question? Because you don't want to get it wrong. But sometimes you try and make a space just in case they want to approach you. And I've had it a few times where people have like dropped a message on Instagram going, oh, you're really busy talking to a guy, and then you went to the bar, and I just didn't want to interrupt. I was like, you're welcome to interrupt. It's fine. I kind of went to the bar so you could, because I had a feeling you wanted to. So that was your golden opportunity and you missed it. But no, it's fine. Yeah, it is weird. I still find it weird. And like after doing Peachcon as well, like, people just coming up and asking how, like, saying like, oh, your paintings changed my life. And I'm like, how? I just sit in front of a camera and just paint. How is like painting change your life? And that's the thing I'm really interested in. What is it that I've done? And it's more like maybe the language I've used, or just being there in the background is like giving them some sense of confidence, or giving something to focus on. It's like, oh, you know what? I never really thought about it that way. That's really nice. And that gives you a morale boost as well. But again, you can't let it get to your head. You can't, ego has to be tempered in these kind of things. I mean, everyone has an ego. I have an ego, but you have to temper it. It's a big responsibility being a face of the internet, because you've got to, consider the people that you are talking to. And there's some people out there that I guess cater it to different mindsets or whatever. But yeah, I like to not come across as being a bit of an idiot.
Well,
I try, Jordan, but I wonder if I don't.
I don't think anybody could accuse someone of having an ego when they name their own convention after themselves. I think that's quite standard.
Yeah,
but actually, I mean, on that,
was a wild choice.
You recently did do Peachcon, the sort of inaugural sort of event, right? And that feels like the culmination of certainly a phase, I suppose, of a transition from Games Workshop and being at the sort of heart of the business to fully making your home on the internet outside of Games Workshop, right? I mean, has that journey that you've been on over the last couple of years, has that again changed your relationship with the hobby, changed your relationship with the community?
Yes, changed my relationship with the community in a far positive light, because when you work at Workshop, you don't see a lot of the comments, you don't see a lot of the engagements, and especially when you weren't going to events anymore because they wanted to stop people being the faces because of whatever reasons and stuff like that. It made it quite hard to know who you're aiming your content at, because you're just doing the content and then you just hope people watch it. Whereas engaging the community, when I first put the post that I was like going lone gun and just doing my own thing, and then just this massive outpouring of like support was quite overwhelming. I was like, oh, this is a lot. And just like people just saying really positive stuff. I didn't get any like negative comments about me going off and doing my own thing, and just people just overwhelmingly just like positive about what I was going to do. And I had an idea what I want to do, and that's kind of evolved a bit. But every time I put a video out, there's just nice. I know it's not about the nice comments. For me, I like to see the constructive comments as well. If I've not included something, or I've skirted over a subject or whatever, like people are like, oh, you skirted over this. What do you mean by that? I'm like, damn it, I did. I shouldn't have done that. But I have become so fond of the community, and also other content creators as well, because when you're at Workshop, you are very insular. It's almost like a sense of cabin fever. You're not really allowed to look on the outside world. You can only stay in your own little empire, and you must deal with the people within that. And I know there are the influencer programs where there are people that deal with the outside world, but you really actively shouldn't. And I kind of didn't for a long time look at other YouTubers, because I didn't want to be influenced by their style and then somehow mimic that and then be accused of copying them. So I just wanted to be me, but then I wasn't allowed to be me. Because of the corporate rules of like, no, this is the standard that we want our paint guides to be. We want them to be stale and boring. We want them to be very formulaic, and you can't have fun. That's the kind of style we would like to go with for a while. And I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, it wasn't really that at all. We did have fun still. Me and Duncan certainly did. But there was a style that was made, and I guess to a certain point, it could have been a bit more upbeat, a little bit more, had more personality in it. And I don't think it did. It was very corporate. Whereas when I left, I was able to be myself. I can chill out, I can make mistakes. And this is the other thing as well, I always wanted to put mistakes in my videos, because how can you teach someone if you don't show them the troubleshooting side of things of stuff as well? So I have learned, you only learn by making mistakes. So all my learnings are because I've made tons of mistakes, and I've now know not to do that. So by showing that in the videos, going, right, I'm painting, I paint quite fast, I'm quite messy when I start my early base coats and stuff like that. So I'm going to make mistakes, but don't worry, because it's paint and you can paint over those mistakes and tell you later on it's all fine. So my early and I did get the odd comment here and there about like, I'm a really messy painter and I shouldn't be allowed to be on YouTube. And that's usually people that obviously, and I don't think it's high-end painters. I think a lot of high-end painters, because I talk with a lot of them, respect what I do, and I super respect what they do. It's those people that think they're higher end painters but aren't high end painters, but want to be high end painters, that tend to have that kind of weird ego that just jump on people's channels and Instagrams and tell them they're rubbish at painting. It seems to be a common thing, but I tend to ignore those anyway. But I like to share those mistakes. I like to talk about how you correct them and why it's happened as well. It's happened because I rushed, or it's happened because this is a tricky part and you're going to get paint around the eyelids. But don't worry, because we're going to do the inset of the eyelid and then we're going to do the raised bit after, because that makes more sense, because then you can tidy up. And never really was able to do that before. So having control over those kind of design decisions as well has been really freeing. And then obviously getting the response from the community going, I really like this style of video, you should do more of that. I'm like, cool, I now know what people like. And one person is just, that's what they like. But when you get like 20, 30, 40 people in your comments saying it, you're like, because usually not everyone comments, right? But that tends to give you an idea of like, that seems to be a general theme then going on. There's about 40 people commenting. Usually 10% of your audience tend to comment. So probably 10, there's a lot more percentages that are probably thinking the same thing. So maybe I should look at doing that more. That's quite interesting. But when it's like one person saying it, you're like, it's nice, but I'll think about it. But yeah, the engagement with content creators like yourself, Stu as well. I love Stu, Miniature Realms, and just all the others out there. I was always told they're all very up themselves. They're all in it. It's a very dog eat dog world out there. And then when you go out there and you start doing it, it's just a super tight network of community, and everyone wants to help each other out. No, it's almost like no one's trying to go, oh, you can't do this because that's going to take my views away from me. It's not that at all. They say, well, tide lifts or ships rise with the tide. I forget the analogy. The one I do remember is like, candles never diminish by lighting other candles. It's, you just add in flame to others. You're not losing any flame by doing it. And I see a lot of the content creators being like that, because people reach out and go, like the Remembrancer has reached out many times going, I've got some videos to help you with your audio. Liam Dempsey wants to get me on his channel, because it's going to benefit him, but it's going to benefit me. Me chatting to you, you coming to Peachcon was great because a lot of my followers love you. So you being at Peachcon was great for them because they get to see Jordan in the flesh. But also, you're a nice human being. I like you there. But it's great. It's a great community, and I love being able to engage with other content creators, but also the community and do things. And that's kind of why I wanted to do Peachcon. Maybe next year I'll open it more. Maybe have like a grander, I don't know, I mean, I want to crawl before I can sprint kind of thing. But it was initially meant to be a thank you to my patrons for their support. So that initial bump of people, just before I even made a proper video, I had like a 40-second trailer. There was so much support. People jumped on the Patreon I just set up that night, and I just want to say thank you to those and make an event. And I know not everyone can turn up because people live in different countries, and it takes quite a long 12-hour flight to get here or whatever. But it was a gesture of like, this is a thank you. I'm going to put my money into this. You just have to turn up. I know obviously you've got to travel and there's the cost of that and like hotels and stuff, but you won't need to pay anything on the day unless you want to buy the mug, I suppose. But excuse me, I got hiccups. And yeah, it was a gesture of a big thanks. And I wanted to put on food, wanted to put on some tables, get some guests to come along and just have a bit of fun, but also to have a go at doing stuff like that, because I've not done that for a long time, organizing events. And I always wanted to do that anyway for patrons, like a yearly thing to say thanks, and I couldn't do that before. So it's nice to do it, and that's why I want to do it. So, and I love the community. They're great. The odd one can be a bit meanie pants, but we're living in it.
Indeed it is. But yeah, it was a great success, I thought, as an event. But I mean, one of the things that you did showcase at it as well was that it didn't just focus on Games Workshop games. There was plenty of GW stuff there as well. But you also, at that event and on your channel, have expanded your coverage. You've been looking at Silver Bayonet and making sharp battle reports, and you've talked about Starforge and all that sort of Frostgrave and Stargrave. That sort of stuff. That must be quite freeing as well, I imagine, to have the shackles taken off. It can't just be Games Workshop now, it's everything.
So it was something I always wanted to do. So when I initially started the channel, I was going to do like, and I still need to paint up those dudes that you sent me. I've not forgotten. They're like, they're built. It's just that I want to do an old world video, and just lots of things have happened in like a sequence. And the first Frostgrave video is probably guilty of this. So I initially, when I started the channel, I was like, right, I'm going to do a 40k video. I'll do 4 videos a month. I'll do a 40k one. I'll do a Warhammer related one. I'll do something else I like this workshop like Warcry or Necromunda or Kill Team. And then I'll do something else that's, like maybe World War II historical or something different. And I was kind of a format I was going, because I was very mindful that no one watches any of this other content. That's what you get told all the time. Like, no one's interested in historicals. No one watches it. No one's interested in bolt action. No one watches it. I'm like, okay. everyone, you have to put a Space Marine on your thumbnail, otherwise it won't get views. I'm like, why? I want to break that mold. That annoys me. I don't want a Space Marine on my Sharp video. You can get away. Get away. I don't want a Space Marine. Unless Sharp is a Space Marine in Kill Team, then yes, I'm in. But no. And I kind of did a Silver Bayonet video about like Silver Bayonet, why I like it, and that did all right. And I was like, oh, and I did a little paint guide about painting Sharp because I wanted to test the water of that, and that did okay. It wasn't like so you will know this as well. You get like ratings, don't you, on your YouTube Studio of how well a video is doing. And my Sharp paint guide was like a 9 of 10. So that's not very good, but it's okay. And I was like, it's a historical video about painting riflemen, and a bit of feedback from a couple of my American supporters were like, we don't know what Sharp is. I didn't really want to watch it. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. I maybe need to communicate that better. Thank you. So I talked about the Silver Bayonet, and that did okay because that was just me generally frothing over a game I really like, and then how I use that game to make things I wanted to make. And it was along the lines of, I did a video about dwarfs, my journey of dwarfs in the Warhammer world, and talking about, I kind of clickbaited it a bit. Well, it wasn't really clickbait because I talk about it, but the dwarf tank that never was. That was kind of like the feature of the thumbnail to try and draw people in, because I wasn't sure when the dwarfs were going to be coming out for Old World. So I thought I'd just get in there and talk about it. And that kind of format was quite nice, where it was like talky head with a bit of a paint guide in it. So that's what I did with the Silver Bayonet. It was talky head about why I like Silver Bayonet, the things I'm going to do, lots of shots of the things I painted, and then a little paint guide in the middle. And then I moved on to doing Frostgrave. And I was like, I guess the title and the thumbnail helped. Like, is this better than Warhammer? Question mark. I always put a question mark because it's a question. It's not a fact. But you'd always get the people that clearly have not watched the video and just respond emotionally to the actual thumbnail and just go, of course it's not. You're like, have you watched the video? Because I say it's not. I actually say in the video it's not. But it's just to draw people in. But, you know, it for my channel, that went viral for me. And what it told me was it wasn't really about the content. It was about how you pitch it. So if I can talk about Frostgrave, which probably was forgotten for the last 5 years, and get 63,000 views in the space of like a couple of weeks, then it's not about the issue, it's historicals or World War II. It's about how you package it right. And I'm still kind of working out, because that was either I was really looking, it was an anomaly and people were talking about Frostgrave at the time, or what, I don't know. But I've had a couple of like videos that have done okay, but not as well as that. And I think the title and the thumbnail were key to that. So as much as I don't like doing the clickbait thing, I might need to, from time to time, look at tactical ways of doing that. I mean, this week I'm doing a video about Peachcon, and I'm going to call it "I Conned My Supporters." That's the name of it. So, and then maybe have like a picture of me in like a swag bag and like a little face mask or something like that. But you know, people, because I did that. I did a video about cons in the UK, and I was called "It's All a Con," and it was about all the different cons, and people really enjoyed it, and that did really, really well. Again, it's about how you package it from a thumbnail. And this is the thing that I'm still learning, is like, people see the thumbnail, then they see the title, then they engage with the first 15 seconds, and if you can get all those ticked, then you probably got them in for a while. And there's obviously people that just want to support you and watch the videos because they love you, and they don't care what the thumbnail looks like or the title. There's just another Jordan video, another Peachy video, another Duncan video, so they're going to watch it because they support you. But those that don't and don't know you, that's the things you have to draw them in with. But yeah, what it told me was I can do anything, and I kind of like that, and I like talking about other game systems, and I'm a big fan now of all these other game systems. And the Frostgrave one kind of showed me a lot of other systems I wasn't aware of. So this week I brought 5 leagues from the Borderlands, 5 parsecs from home. I already got like Rangers of Shadow Deep, all solo aimed games as well. So they will feature down the line as battle reports on the channel as well. And I've got like warbands painted for these. I've got all sorts of things in mind that I want to do with them, little story threads and stuff. And I know I like a game when I like literally read Oathmark. Oathmark's like the Warhammer equivalent that Joseph McCulloch's done. And I read that, and it's like, you make your own realm. I'm like, okay. You have to, there's a mechanic to making your own realm. I'm like, okay, so how does this work? So you have like, it's like concentric circles, and in those, are you aware of this? I don't want to be teaching you how to.
No, I'm not. I'm familiar with the game by name.
Yeah. Okay. So this hooked me in straight away. Just this little mechanic. So you can, have an army that's based off all elves. You can have an army that's based off all orcs. But what is encouraged is your realm has all of those races in it, and your army has those races in it. So you're not like an orc army. You are the realm of Teldari, or you're the realm of Ebonheart or something like that. And in Ebonheart, you have orcs and elves and undead. And there might be friendly undead. There might be really evil undead. You know, you can dictate how that looks. But what you have to do is build a realm, and you have a circle in the middle, which is location 1 or whatever. It has like in the parentheses, it's a 1, and you have like these options you can pick from. It has to be the city, so you have to pick a nation or a faction. So humans, orcs, elves, or whatever. That's your main capital city of your realm. So I went with humans, and then you have like a secondary zone, which is like you pick 2 other things you can have. You can pick an elf city in there if you wanted to. You can pick an orc city, but you get 2 to pick in the second zone, and then you get some other territories which have like a 2 in the parenthesis, which then is more elite units potentially. So I went with like an elven smithy, which gives me access to some elven troops. I also went with an orc smithy, which gives me access to some orc troops. Then you go to the third zone, which has 3 sections in it, and then again so on and so forth. You can then pick what you want, as long as you pick in zone 3 parenthesis 3 stuff, 2 stuff, or 1 stuff. You're okay, right? And that's the most it gets anyway. But you basically like pick these different zones. So there might be like the dark forest, which gives you access to wolves and werewolves. You might pick the high fells, which gives you access to a dragon. So you basically make this realm, and you don't have to make maps. But what I've done, Jordan, is that not only have I made this little concentric circle thing with all the things in it, I've now gone ahead and made a full-on map of Ebonfell. I've called it Ebonfell. That's it, Ebonfell. There's the smeltery from when I was a young boy. I used to work in the smeltery, and there's a goblin city. I've put, because you can have goblin cities and orc cities. I've got a goblin city in my realm called Rascal Town. I don't know if you ever heard of Rascal Town, but
I've heard of Rascal Town.
Yeah. So that's in there as well. So what I really liked about it was the simplicity of how you make a realm, but then it dictates on what units you can use in your army and what access. It's like
a tech tree in an RTS game.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, absolutely that. Except as a human, I have access to some of the bog standard human forces, and I think some of a group of elite ones, because one of the I can't remember if it was the monastery I picked or something like that. That gives you wizards and some other stuff. But most of the things is like a mix of elves, a mix of dwarfs, a mix of orcs. I've even got some ancient catacombs, which gives me access to undead, but it's revenant undead as opposed to like skeleton undead. So they're more like they've got like skin on them, like zombies, but like not quite zombies. But the Oathmark revenants are really nice models, and I just wanted to use them. But what I really like about it is it's model agnostic, so you don't have to use the Oathmark stuff. You can use whatever you want to. So if I wanted to go down the realm of Warhammer and make my own little border prints, I could use this system and then dictate on how I recruit my forces for my border prints. Or if I decide I'm going to have like a settlement in Lustria or the Southlands, I'm going to use this system to make that. And then I can, because if you do this with the Total War games, you obviously, like you said, the tech tree, you build like different buildings that give you access to different units. And it's such a smart little system, and already I'm sold on the game. I've not played a game yet. I don't even know how the rules work, but the fact that I can make my own realm and I like what I can pick, I'm in.
It sounds great. Yeah, that's really fun. I like this. I'm excited to see your video on it now, because I want to hear more. Great.
Well, I've already drawn the map, so I'll do the old classic like Game of Thrones, like din 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 din. Welcome to Ebonfell. I'll come up with a better name. Maybe Peachtopia.
Of course, yeah.
Name it
brilliant. Well, I mean,
I was going to say, sorry.
No, you finished the thought.
All I was going to say was like just experiencing these other game systems, because people are suggesting in the comments, has now opened my mind to all these different things I can pick from, and I'm just enjoying the journey of like I love Warhammer. I love all things workshop, but I'm enjoying my hobby a lot more because of experiencing these other things. Sorry to cut you off there.
Not at all. And you've more or less answered my question, which I was pretty confident of the answer anyway. But I suppose my last sort of question for you was just, are you enjoying the channel and being out there and just doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, I really am. It feels weird that I am making content for for an audience, so they're kind of like an employer, if you like. And I am aiming my content for my patrons, and then I put it on YouTube. And if it does okay on YouTube, great. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world, because I'm aiming at and there's something that Pete the Wargamer suggested, like focus on your patrons, do the content for them, and then, you know, if it does well, great. Yeah, you can try and package it so it does better, but do what works for you, because that's why they're supporting you. But also, you know, if they want to see certain stuff, do stuff for them as well. I can only at the moment, with the skill set I have and my knowledge, I do a video a week. I'm trying to get that a bit sooner. I did come to a point where I was working a week ahead, but then some stuff with Warlord, with like checks, and because I did a Hail Caesar game and then doing some bat reports, put me back to like hand to mouth again, which is fine. I'll crawl back to getting a week ahead again. But that's the worst it gets, really, is I have this set of standards for myself, which is on a Monday I start recording the physical. If it's a painting video, I start recording the physical painting footage. If it's a game, I just record the game. I take loads of notes. Then on the Tuesday I edit a whole bunch of it. On Monday night I also edit a whole bunch of it. So I do work quite late Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I have almost like 12 to 18-hour days across those 3 days, which is my choice. No one's forcing this, but it's a weird thing I put myself, because I want to try and get my videos to the patrons at least a few days before it goes out. 2 reasons. One, they deserve to get it early because they're patrons and they're lovely human beings. But also what I've discovered is they can be quite critical in a good way. So they will see things and go, did you know there's a bit here where one of your paint swatches doesn't come up? And or your audio at this point, because after the dwarf video, there's a section of my dwarf video where I just didn't do the ducking properly on the audio and the music went really loud. Right. And I just had to, as soon as, because my wife often watches the videos when they go live, she watches them 3 times on loud. I'm like, you can watch it once on loud, but I don't know why you want to watch the other 2 loud, because I don't want to hear my voice the same time again, because I get she wants to watch it and enjoy it, but she wants to, and I think when you have your VPN, you can watch a video 3 times for 3
right.
views. So she's trying to maximize my views. She's super kind like that. But yeah, so I was watching the dwarf one and I just heard the music go really loud. You can hardly hear me talk. And that was like for a small section, but I was so ashamed. I just had to go for a walk out in the village because I was just hating myself. But most people it was quite forgiving, but that was a lesson learned, and you have to make those mistakes to learn from them. And you know, if I could, I would have redone that video, but it already made loads of views by that point. And it was like, well, it's you know, maybe I can revisit a later date and do some tweaks to it, maybe add some stuff to it, because all the new dwarf stuff that's come out, that'd be quite good. So I can do an amendment to it and have like the extended version that it works for Lord of the Rings. Why can't it work for me? But yeah, so I have this weird sort of set of rules why I make these videos early week, get them to the patrons, they give me feedback, and then it goes up on a Friday, and I try and keep to that schedule. There's been a couple of times where I've either been a bit ill or I just can't do it, so I try and get some shorts out instead. But I think there's 1 week where it was the Warlord one where I just didn't have anything for a week, which felt wrong. But yeah, that's my own rules I've made for myself, and no one's like expecting that. They are always like, you make a lot of content, Peach, slow down. I'm like, but I'm not making enough. I need to make more for you. But yeah, if in time I'd like to get an editor. I've got a friend who used to edit the stuff for Warhammer TV. I'd want to get him to edit some of my videos, but I need to have a good conversation with him about how he needs them packaging, so he understands what the hell's going off, because otherwise he's just going to get a load of footage and a load of audio and be like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I need to be better at writing a brief, because for me, whilst I'm editing it, this is what I really like, is like if I do like the talking head video, I sit at the camera and I talk, and then I put loads of footage and imagery over that, whether that's stuff I've painted or stuff I'm referring to. But when I do the paint guide, I don't talk when I'm painting. I just sit and paint the model, get it all done, try and keep it in focus, because there's a lot to focus on when you're trying to keep the model in focus and make sure you're like, you know. And sometimes when I'm painting to camera, I'm actually finding it a lot harder because I'm a bit further away than I normally would be when I'm painting, because you've got to make sure it's there for camera. And every time I'm trying to like do a different camera setup, it just doesn't work. So I'm still like fiddling around with that. But what I've discovered is and this was pretty much early on, was I just record me painting, and then I cut that footage together, the bits I want to see being covered, including the mistakes, and then I just sit and watch it, and I get my mic and I talk through the process.
Hmm.
And it makes so much sense because I never had that before. Before it would be like I would do a video, I'd talk to camera, and at least at Warhammer TV, you'd have like on screen so you could see and you'd be talking through the bit you're painting, but you'd only get like a 4 seconds before you got the classic before it moves to the next bit. So paint a little bit of gold on the model. The entire model's covered in gold. Okay, cool. I didn't see any of that, Peach, but thanks for that. So yeah, it's been really good, like seeing that whole process from my side and what works for me and what doesn't. But yeah, if I get an editor, I can get more videos done, and yeah, maybe even do a battle report channel or narrative battle report channel, so I can do some more of those. But yeah, a few people have reached out and want to do battle reports with me, but at the moment I'm finding it better to do it solo because I just know what's going off, if that makes sense. When you've got someone else involved, then there's a lot more explaining to do. There's a lot more, I don't know, more plates to spin, I suppose. But at the moment, just doing it solo, I have a bit of control over that, and I can just get in where I need to. And once or twice make the odd tweak, because there's been a few times where it's been a massive anticlimax in the game, and I'm like, didn't like that. Didn't like that anticlimax. And this is how White Dwarf used to do their bat reports. They'll be like, play 3 games and then pick either elements of each of them or just the one that was the best, which tells a better story, as opposed to, here's this game and that new character that's awesome died in the first turn. Okay, cool. I really want to see what he did. Yeah, you can't because he died. Okay, cool. Fantastic. So we'll never know the rules of what he does. No, not until you buy him. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, I totally get why, these things are done. So there's been the first one, Sharp died at the end to a werewolf, but he didn't die. He just got wounded, which kind of made sense, actually. I was like, do I change that because it's Sharp? And I was like, no, because he's been beaten up by the guy he killed once and now he's back as a werewolf. So he should get smashed in the face. That actually adds to a great story hook. It was the second game, something happened. I was like, that's a bit pants. I don't like that. So I just changed like a couple of sections of that turn and just replayed through a bit. But yeah, it makes sense to do that. But yes, I love it. I love it, Jordan. It's freeing. I feel like I every now and again when I'm doing the footage, not even every now and again, pretty much most day actually, I feel like when I was a kid and I was excited about the hobby and all those worlds, like looking through like the Dragonlance books and looking through the old White Dwarfs and just getting genuinely excited when I was in the car going to like my uncle and aunts and with my dad and mum, and I've got a White Dwarf and I'm flicking through the pages, but I'm not reading the words. I'm looking at all the cool battle pictures and stuff like that and going, oh, I'd love to do that. And I'm getting that sense again with what I'm doing, even if it's not Warhammer related, just exploring all these other games and just trying new things and just having fun. And it's great. It's liberating. I love it. And I hope it stays. Otherwise I have to start pushing trolleys at Asda, which is a great job. I used to do that. So, I'm good at trolley pushing. So if you do need a trolley pusher, just let me know. I can do it for you. But yeah, it's good. I'm loving it. I might not seem it. I am. I'm really loving it. It's great. Yeah.
Well, I think people can see that you're loving it in the content itself, right? In the videos that you're making, because that enthusiasm and that joy just it radiates from all of the stuff that you're putting out there. So yeah, it's definitely, I think people know and can see it.
Good, yeah, because sometimes I'm worried. There's been a few times when I've edited the video, I'm like, I look miserable. Do I redo that? That jumper's in the wash now. Oh, do I redo that? Because I look really miserable. But then because I do a couple of takes, I like cut like a bit of that one and a bit of that one, and it looks a bit more upbeat. So there's sometimes I can just like fudge it. But yeah, I do sometimes get a bit over it. I think you overthink it, and I assume you
easy to do. Yeah,
always overthinking. But yeah. Weirdly, when I'm painting, Jordan, I have you in the background telling me about Games Workshop's histories, which I think I still say. I've said this in my Peachcon video that there's so many people at Workshop think that you used to work for Workshop because you know so much. Happens when you're a good researcher, you know your stuff.
Yeah, and you just sneak around in the background. No one's looking. Just hide in the corner.
Yeah, you're good at that. You're good at that. Obviously, in all my footage for Peachcon, I have to keep looking for you. Like, where's Jordan here? Turn up quite early. Where is he?
Where's the janitor in the back, just trying to blend in and listen into the development conversations.
Yeah. You sat and chatted with Paul Hicks a bit, didn't you? Did you have
I did.
Yeah. Paul's great. Love Paul.
Fantastic. Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah. He did Rifleman Peach for me ages ago, and that was because I've been aware of his models for a long time. I've probably painted a fair few as well, but he reached out and we did a chat on my previous employer's channel, and I was like, oh, this guy's great, I love him. And yeah, we just, I wouldn't say like, got a great relationship, like friend relationship, but we talk to each other from time to time. And I was like mentioning about Peachcon, he was like, I'd love to come down and do some sculpting. I was like, I can't really afford to pay you, so if you got a long way to travel. He was just like, no, I want to come and just sit and just sculpt, it'll be great. I was like, okay, cool. And then he had a great time, I had a great time. I felt bad because I kept trying to get him coffees and then forgetting because I kept getting way late. But seeing people sculpting in the flesh, it's just so liberating. But
incredible. Yeah, absolutely amazing to see. And he was talking through his actual process and sort of explaining why he was doing certain things. And yeah, I was genuinely fascinated. I mean, I'd love to chat to him and sort of, put something out there as an interview with Paul at some point. Because the actual, like, getting inside the artist's kind of mind or getting that perspective on the act of the sculpt, the creation, so interesting. And it's so different to, I can absolutely not do that. I can't even conceive of how you create something from from clay and turn it into like a 3D thing. So alien to me. So it was amazing to hear someone who can so clearly articulate it. Right. It was really fun.
It's interesting because being someone that was an art student, I went to art college and we did like clay work, we did sculpting and stuff. I still struggled to be able to see the shape and the form. And I like make indentations, I get a bit of an idea, but it's like seeing like all the artists and the sculptors of like Games Workshop past and stuff like that, and how they just make these really elaborate models just from clay and like an armature and green stuff. You're like, how? That's insane. And it's like, what's in your head? So even now, even with the digital stuff, I know like they've obviously got an image in their mind's eye of what that looks like and how they go about doing it. And obviously it tweaks like anything would, but it's always fascinated me, and I've got such utmost respect for sculptors. They are aliens in their skill set. It is so alien to me. It really is. As someone that's an artist that builds and paints and and has dabbled in that stuff, I still struggle to see how they visualize it. It's mad. But yeah, no, Paul's great. It was good to have him down. It was just a shame Andy couldn't make it because he runs Baron's War, and obviously Paul does a lot of sculpting and does Baron War with footsore miniatures. So I was hoping to see some of that. I know Dave Andrews was there at the event, and he was just like, "Oh, I really want to play Baron's War. You said it was coming." I was like, "Yeah, I know," but Andy Upday's dog was poorly, so he had to take him to the vet. But maybe next year we'll get some Baron's War, because I want to do some Baron's War because it looks fun. And that was again an early days Peachy thing where I used to get like knights and paint my own heraldry. And there's a game called Cry Havoc, which is a board game, but I wanted to do like a miniature version of it, and Baron's War pretty much is that. So I need to get into that and start like finding that old rule set and getting the cards out and making Cedric and Sir Ronald or whatever, and just painting the same heraldry on those guys and
it's a Peach, that. Surely
there has to be a Sir Peach, yes. Christophe de la Pêche, Sir Christophe de la Pêche from Normandy. I think that's where our family hails. I've been told. I'm Norman. I'm a Norman. Oh, no. Yeah, funny.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very conscious. I mean, I would love to keep talking all day, Peach. I absolutely, I'll steal your entire afternoon. But I think this has been a really wonderful chat. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry my tech was running as late. I do apologise.
Not at all. It's been great.
Yeah, well, I am an idiot. And thank you. And I could talk for more, but yes, I should probably like sign out. Let you get on with your life.
Peachy, as ever, you are a remarkably fine fellow and a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for joining me to share so many awesome stories. It was a great conversation. If you would like to check out Peachy's channel on YouTube, Peachy Tips, I've included a link down below. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. If you're not, it is a wonderful place. Very much recommended. If you would like to support the work that I do, you can check out my Patreon. I've included a link for that in the description below as well. And of course, you can now listen to all of my interviews and conversations as a podcast. Just go to wherever you get your pods and search for In Conversation with Jordan Sorcery. Thank you once again to Peachy. Thank you for watching. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery.